We are now in the final stretch of this Resident Evil series. We've covered a lot of games so far, and if you missed the previous 2 parts, then go and check those out first. In this video, we'll be covering the CGI movie Death Island, as it's a sequel to Vendetta, which we covered at the end of part 2. We'll then cover Resident Evil and all the DLCs, Resident Evil 8. And now that Resident Evil 9 just dropped recently, we'll be covering that one in here too, along with any relevant backstory on Alyssa Ashcroft. We'll then be finishing with Shadows of Rose, as that takes us to the furthest part of the Resident Evil timeline. If you have enjoyed these Resident Evil series videos, then please show that by leaving a like on the video, as that helps these videos travel through the algorithm. But anyway, that's enough of that, let's get into the video. Oh, by the way, massive spoilers for the Resident Evil franchise in this video, so beware. So we'll start our video in the 1980s and introduce ourselves to a mysterious organization known as the Connections. The Connections would regularly present themselves as numerous different branching organizations, such as the Defense or the State. But one in particular was the F Foundation. Get this, the F Foundation had donated to Dr. Marcus's research back in 1986. In case you don't remember who Dr. Marcus was, he was one of the founders of the Umbrella Corporation and the guy who successfully developed the working T-virus. The Connections donated $30 million to Dr. Marcus, and this was no doubt one of many donations they had made to him. These donations would become very hard to trace, as all the Connections' shady organizations would cease to exist shortly afterwards. Over the years, government agencies would attempt to blow the whistle on the Connections, but no one would really have any idea just how deep the Connections' influence went. They wished to be involved in what Umbrella were doing. In 1988, Brandon Bailey, who was another of Umbrella's founders, and the guy based in Africa, sending progenitor virus samples to his Umbrella colleagues, wrote to the F Foundation saying that preparations were complete and that he was awaiting a response from someone. He was waiting for the Connections to contact him directly instead of through a middleman, if you like. As Dr. Marcus, Bailey's mentor, had died in 1988, Bailey had taken over from Marcus and was potentially a Connections mole working inside Umbrella. It was previously believed that Bailey himself was the founder of the Connections, but in reality, he isn't really in control. Someone else is. Also in part 1, we looked at how, way before the founding of Umbrella, Oswell E. Spencer had gone to Europe and almost died, but was found by a biologist by the name of Miranda and was nursed back to health in a small village. They became good friends, but Oswell then left the village without saying goodbye. He did leave a note, but was nonetheless inspired by Miranda. He obviously went away to form Umbrella and would focus on his little eugenics project, but what was Miranda doing? Well, despite looking very young in appearance, Miranda was actually pretty old. She was born in the late 19th century, and in 1909, she had a daughter, Eva. Unfortunately, Eva would pass away from the Spanish flu after it hit the village hard in the year 1919. Miranda was quite obviously distraught and wandered into a nearby cave in order to end her life. However, she came across a black substance in the cave and touched it. She found out it was part of a collective and saw the memories of people that had died to it. This fungal root had consumed the bodies of those buried in the village, and that included her daughter Eva, and Miranda saw those memories. So Miranda began to study this growth she named the mold, and her aim was to bring her deceased daughter back via the mold. So she created an organism from it, and this she called the Cadu, which translates as gift. This is why Oswell left the village. Her aims were vastly different to his. She wished to use an organism to bring someone back. He wished to use a virus to not only change the entire world, but to become immortal. She became a sort of cult leader in the village, a self-proclaimed prophet of the Black God. Much like the villagers in Valdelobos in Spain, these villagers too abandoned their Christian faith in order to follow this new one. They would refer to Miranda as Mother Miranda, and she infected many villagers with her Cadu, which acted like a parasite, and this was all because Miranda wanted to find a suitable host to implant the consciousness of Eva into. Some died, some became lichens, but with these lichens being banished from the village, Miranda did find 4 very promising candidates, but we'll get to them later. Having found out about the mold somehow, around the turn of the millennia, the Connections made contact with Miranda and offered to assist her in her research and would help her try and bring Eva back. Naturally, she accepted their offer, so she gave them some of the mold along with Eva's DNA. The Connections had been working on something they'd called NextBAS, which although disbanded by this point stood for Next Generation Experimental Battlefield Superiority. The goal was simply to create a bioweapon that could neutralize enemy combatants en masse with minimal direct contact. They'd been working with HCF, the military group that Wesker had once commanded, that the Connections also control, and after the NextBAS project was folded, all assets from that project went into this new one. The The connections got to work, but all they could do was create a defect that they named Evelyn, a bioweapon that was designed to take on the appearance of a young girl, 10 years of age, so that she could blend into the population without people becoming suspicious. They'd essentially created what was now a weaponized version of the mold. Evelyn herself was the fifth in a line of experiments that would hopefully be able to control people's minds, with Evelyn being the first of the E-types, designated E001, with her being created back in 2014. The Connections had a pretty effective bioweapon on their hands here, and naturally, news had made its way to the BSAA, who had organised an operation to locate and destroy Evelyn. So in response, after a failed BSAA raid on the Connections facility in Munich, the Connections made arrangements to have her taken into hiding. The Connections assigned 2 agents, Evelyn's handlers, to transport her to a secret facility via an oil tanker named Annabelle. These handlers are part of the Connections Special Operations Division and are Director Alan Droney and caretaker Mia Winters. A short way into their trip across the ocean, Mia records a message for her husband Ethan, in which she says that she's tired of her babysitting job. It's very clear that Mia's job is a closely guarded secret that she keeps from her husband. Anyway, it all goes bad when both Alan and Mia lose control of Evelyn due to the ship experiencing some bad weather. She starts to infect the entire ship, killing all of the crew. Alan ends up injured, so Mia goes off in search of Evelyn in a desperate attempt to get this situation under control. She was creating monsters from the mold, simply termed molded, and Mia discovered Evelyn was vomiting large masses of mold, which was far in excess of her own body mass, which is of grave concern. On the way through the ship, Mia discovered to her horror that Evelyn had in fact bonded with her and saw Mia as her mother. On the upper decks of the ship, she finds Alan there, and he curses Evelyn, leading to her killing him with the mold, and then Mia herself gets infected. She then sends Ethan another message, in stark contrast to her previous one, says goodbye and tells Ethan to stay away. The ship then breaks apart and Mia falls into the water. The ship then washes up in the parish of Dulvey, Louisiana. Around the time that Evelyn was being transported on the tanker, former US Marine Jack Baker and his family were preparing to batten down the hatches after hearing a news report regarding the storm that is headed for Dulvey. The Baker's son Lucas had heard the fuss over the Annabelle, the tanker that had washed up in the bayou, so he and Jack head out to investigate, and they only found Mia at first, taking her back to their home. But Jack would later return home with Evelyn too, after he went back for another look. Jack and his wife Marguerite have a joke about how Jack always wanted to run a B&B, and she tells Jack to put Evelyn in Lucas's old room, to which Lucas objects, but Marguerite asks the daughter Zoe to grab some clean clothes for her. Taking them up to Lucas's room, Jack tells Zoe he's going to check the situation in the boathouse, but approaching Evelyn, she opens her eyes and says, "They're mine now." The lights go out and Zoe finds the girl has run off. Using a lighter as the house is pitch black, she makes her way downstairs, hears a crash and finds Lucas lying on the floor of the dining room unconscious. Going back upstairs, she hears her mother muttering in the bathroom, and entering, she grabs Zoe, with bugs coming out of her mouth stating that Evelyn gave her a gift. Jack enters and holds Marguerite off, telling Zoe to get some rope from the garage. She fetches it and takes it back upstairs, but Jack is now drowning Marguerite. He turns to Zoe, stabs himself in the chest, seemingly unperturbed by it, saying that he's doing it out of devotion to Evelyn, and he chases her. Managing to get away, she makes her way outside and to the trailer in the backyard. In there, Zoe finds Mia on the floor. A strange head is there on the floor, along with a note written by Mia which mentions what happened to her, Evelyn, who she is, and how dangerous she is. But it speaks of a serum. Zoe then turns around and Evelyn is stood there, grabs her arm and Zoe passes out. Coming to, Zoe is sat at the table like nothing happened. The Bakers are having breakfast and the storm is over. Everything seems fine. But Evelyn appears, calling Zoe her sister. The Bakers would then be isolated and controlled by Evelyn over the next few years, but something else is happening. Another bioterrorism incident, this time in San Francisco. It's 2015. 1 year after Glenn Arias's plan to infect New York with the animality virus had failed, Leon Kennedy is in San Francisco. Speaking with Hunnigan, he is there to apprehend a DARPA researcher by the name of Dr. Antonio Taylor, as he's been selling classified information to the highest bidder. Foreign agents are after him as well, so the DSO need him brought in. Later spotting a van that Dr. Taylor was bundled into by masked men, Leon chases it on the freeway, but is attacked by a woman also on a bike. And this culminates in Leon's bike being destroyed and the woman, along with Dr. Taylor, escaping. Around the same time on a beach somewhere, Claire Redfield, still working for TerraSave, turns up and inspects an orca that washed up sporting a huge bite mark, much bigger than a bite from your average shark. In a dark building somewhere 6 years since she'd been under the mind control of Wesker in Africa, having undergone BSAA tests and lots of rehab, Jill Valentine is there and investigating a bunch of murders in San Francisco that look like bioterrorism. Working alongside the SFPD, Jill is reckless and shuts off her comms after she's told to wait for backup. She finds a dead woman and is attacked by the woman's zombified husband, who she fights off. Chris enters the place with an SFPD SWAT team and berates Jill for her reckless actions, and he thinks that she's clearly not ready to be back in the field. So it seems that a T-virus is back again, an advanced strain though, as Rebecca Chambers, who is now an advisor to the BSAA, informs Chris Redfield that the 12 people that have already died have died as a result of this strain of the virus. What's more is they weren't bitten, but they had needle marks. The zombies' victims didn't turn either, they died from their wounds, which explains why the woman Jill found wasn't a zombie. Rebecca makes it clear that Chris should go easy on Jill, as she likely blames herself for what happened to her in 2009. Speaking to her at a shooting range, Chris tells her he wants her off the case as she needs time off. She talks about being mind-controlled and being conscious but being unable to control herself. She insists that she is fine now, and Chris tells her about what happened to Piers, that he died to save him. Chris worries that they've been in this fight for so long now that they're getting numb to it, and they need to be careful it doesn't eat away at them. In a control room somewhere else, the woman who attacked Leon is there along with a man, and another man, walking with a cane, enters. The woman there is revealed to be Maria, who it seems has not had much problem linking up with more nefarious individuals. The man with the cane tells the other man they have a prototype now, and that they can move to the mass production phase. It's revealed that the man in front of the screen is Dr. Taylor. The man with the cane then taps it on the ground repeatedly, and puts a revolver to the head of Dr. Taylor with one bullet in it, pulling the trigger. Having survived this twisted game of Russian roulette, the man with the cane, called Dylan, puts the gun to his own head and pulls the trigger again, surviving. He says that fate has decided he will die some other way. You see, this is Dylan's way of processing his survivor's guilt. Back in 1998, when crap had hit the fan in Raccoon City, Dylan was a member of a PMC hired by Umbrella to evacuate high-ranking Umbrella staff from the city, along with government officials. And to Dylan and his friend JJ's disbelief, they were ordered to shoot civilians on sight if they tried to get past them. Anyway, the squad he was with were wiped out, all apart from himself and JJ, with their friends having been bitten. They were all infected, and command ordered them to shoot anyone that had been bitten as they were infected. JJ and Dylan fought over this order, as Dylan thought they could have just been taken to a hospital, but JJ ended up shooting them all after they turned into zombies, whilst Dylan was screaming on the ground. JJ later got bitten and infected himself, and it slowly dawned on Dylan that he'd have to kill JJ, who didn't want to die, so another fight occurred between the two, with Dylan ending up having to kill his friend with a metal box, as they'd run out of ammo. But back to the present day. Jill and Chris then speak with Claire. She tells them about the orca that she found washed upon the beach, and says the entire area around Alcatraz is a national marine sanctuary. TerraSave had been tracking some whales that had just disappeared. Rebecca says that she checked the DNA they got from the orca's bite wound, and it had small traces of the advanced T-virus. The SFPD weren't able to find out a connection between all the people that had been infected, but Rebecca dug into the people's activities, and they had all visited Alcatraz at some point recently. So Chris, Jill and Claire civvy up, if you like, and go on a tour of Alcatraz, whilst Rebecca tells Chris she'll be able to whip up a vaccine in no time. In the control room, Dylan finds Dr. Taylor has done a runner, but Dylan says he will not get far. He sees the people on the tour of Alcatraz on the monitors. He then releases something, saying it's time they debuted their creation. Whilst looking around the prison, someone is attacked by an infected. He'd seemingly come out of nowhere. How are these people turning? Chris rushes over and shoots the infected person, much to the shock of everyone there. One by one, people that were just normal turn into infected and start attacking people. Taking them out, Chris, Jill and Claire find themselves the only survivors. Jill got separated from them though and ended up in the sub-levels of the prison. Chris and Claire say that their comms are down, and Chris wants to go find Jill. They hear someone who could be another infected, but it's Dr. Taylor. Back with Jill, at some point she is surprised by Leon. Asking what he's doing there, he says that he's tracked Dr. Taylor here to the island. After they move forward and destroy a bunch of what appear to be evolved lickers, despite Umbrella having previously considered them to be an evolutionary dead end, they move through the sewer system. Dr. Taylor is asked who he is, and he lies to Claire and gives a fake name, Tony Davis. He then finds out she is from TerraSave and aggressively accuses her of being a terrorist. He's referring to an incident at an airport called Harvardville Airport, where an ex-TerraSave employee named Curtis Miller orchestrated a T-virus outbreak and TerraSave refrained for the attack. They're once again attacked by infected, and once they're dealt with, they see that Taylor got injured. Claire treats him, and he's surprised that she's helping him since he called her a terrorist and everything. Something then flies towards Chris, Claire and Taylor, and Claire feels like she got stung by something. Same with Chris, as something did indeed fly towards them. Taylor tries to flee, knowing exactly what this is, and he stops in his tracks once he sees Maria stood at the top of the stairs, and she walks towards him. Back with Leon and Jill, after sharing more details on why they're there, it seems all their cases have merged as they're all connected. Finding an incubation chamber in a submarine dock which has been turned into an armory, they spot Dylan's control center. Rebecca learns something troubling from Hunnigan, that someone accessed the DoD's server and stole key data on bioterrorism cases that went all the way back to Raccoon City, including data on key personnel involved: Chris, Jill, Leon and Claire. In Dylan's control center, Leon identifies things called biodrones. Given that Taylor is a robotic expert, the biodrones were created by him. Saying they should burn the incubation tank and the area around it, Dylan makes contact over the intercom, addressing them by name. He explains that he's in the prison block's main wing and that he'll be waiting. Whilst they head over there, concerned about the welfare of Chris and Claire, Rebecca has vaccines and is ready to head to Alcatraz with a SWAT team. In the prison block, Leon and Jill find Chris and Claire there, locked inside cells and clearly in the process of turning. Taylor is in a cell with Claire, and Leon informs them that the man they think is Tony Davis is a traitor wanted by the US government. Dylan arrives with Maria and welcomes them to Alcatraz. Leon is then hit by one of the tiny biodrones himself, same as Chris and Claire were. Dylan says they are programmed with who to infect. Some might say the perfect bioweapon. He plans to use these to spread the virus all over the world. Maria then attacks Leon, clearly having a vendetta against him because of the death of her father. Leon pieces it together and it's clear that this tech, the virus, came from Glenn Arias, which explains why Maria is there. Dylan did a lot of business with Arias, it seems, and as thanks for Maria delivering this to him, he delivered her the chance for revenge. It seems Dylan's reason for doing this is because of the big corporations doing what they want and getting protection whilst the innocent suffer. He's got a point, but once again, the execution is questionable. He calls them all pawns and suckers for doing the work that protects these large, powerful corporations and institutions. He tells them all about his guilt and the betrayal he'd felt when he was told to kill his colleagues and his friend. He's going to use the virus to clean the slate in a world where there is no justice. He decides who gets infected and who doesn't. He didn't program one of these biodrones to infect Jill, just so he could make her experience what he went through all those years ago. He tries to convince Jill to kill Claire in order to save Dr. Taylor, but she doesn't fall into his trap. Dylan singles out Leon and his work for the US government, covering up for people who lie, and are the ones that continue the cycle of battles that Leon keeps getting dragged into. He points out the ineffective work of TerraSave, essentially sticking a plaster over the wound, and at the same time failing to address the cause to find a real solution. He then turns to Chris and tells him that he loses team members on every mission, yet he keeps coming back with more people to sacrifice. Again, Dylan is angry that they went through the same trauma as him, but ended up working for organizations just as bad as the one that caused it all. With the SWAT team and Rebecca arriving on the island, the entire SWAT team are wiped out by a monster in the sea. This monster is clearly the one that's been attacking the animals in the marine sanctuary. Dylan then shoots Dr. Taylor. Maria grabs Jill, so Leon throws a flashbang, allowing her to get away, so she runs back down into the sewers, whilst Leon continues to get an ass-kicking from Maria. Dylan says they're in the final stage, and the biodrones start hatching from the liquors that have been incubating them. Whilst Claire tries to save Dr. Taylor, they're all suffering bad. But they're all calm, as they all know they've got Jill, that she'll come through. Dr. Taylor then dies, but not before he hands Claire a password, saying that he built a back door into Dylan's system as insurance in case they tried to screw him over. Back with Jill in the sewers, she runs into Rebecca, who has the vaccines. Jill tells Rebecca to go and give the others the vaccine, and she heads off to the armory in order to destroy the incubation tanks. In his control center, Dylan has Maria open the floodgates, and now being confronted by Jill, he injects himself with something and falls into the water, merging with the large aquatic bioweapon. Meanwhile, Rebecca managed to deliver the vaccine, curing everyone, and they head to the armory. Leon goes to the control center and fights with Maria, who says that she's glad the virus didn't kill him, as she wanted to kill him herself. Despite her rage, Leon kills Maria by impaling her on a spike, which pierces her chest. Maria is dead, definitely dead this time. Everyone regroups, and they are now ready to fight the now mutated Dylan. Doing all they can to defeat it, Leon, Jill, and Chris keep Dylan busy whilst Claire and Rebecca use the password Taylor gave them. Jill finds a plasma rifle which she uses to blast Dylan, but its long charge time means that she's only able to use it once. Claire and Rebecca end up turning the biodrones on Dylan, and these cause the BOW's whole chemistry to change as it's overloaded with the T-virus, and this weakens it. Dylan slowly crawls towards open water as they try to close the gate. It's pretty slow in closing though, so whilst Jill jumps in and throws an explosive in its mouth, Chris and Leon give the gate a helping hand. It slams shut on the creature's neck and it blows up thanks to Jill's explosive. In the aftermath, they emerge out into the sunshine, having saved the day again. They get picked up by the BSAA, and Chris tells Jill he's glad that she's back. But let's get back to see what's going on over in Dulvey. In June 2017, Clancy Jarvis, a cameraman, was part of a production called Sewer Gators, in which Peter Walken and the show's producer Andre Stickland would travel all over the US and investigate strange occurrences, sightings, and disappearances. They would hear the story about the Baker residence, which was rumoured to be a haunted house, as sightings of the Baker family had been reported from time to time, and dozens of people had reportedly been kidnapped from the surrounding area over the last couple of years. Shortly after the crew had gained access to the house, Andre was killed, and Clancy was then ambushed by Jack Baker, who knocked him out. Peter would attempt to help someone else who had been taken captive by the Bakers but was killed too. Clancy would also be held captive by the Bakers, and at one point he tried to escape, but then Jack throws Clancy into a situation where he has to defend himself against Evelyn's Molded until 5 in the morning, at which point he is caught again and is kept in a bedroom in the house. Marguerite tries to feed him some of her home cooking, which is truly revolting, and definitely is made up from questionably sourced meat. He has to try and find a way to escape this bedroom without Marguerite hearing what he's up to, and occasionally he has to place everything back the way it was, or else she'll know that he's been out of bed. He does manage to escape the room after stabbing Marguerite in the throat, but little does he know that the worst of the Bakers is waiting for him, Lucas. He puts Clancy into a game of 21, or blackjack, against another man named Hoffman. Despite the threat of having his fingers cut off, being electrocuted to death, and having to play against the cheating Lucas, Clancy is then forced to try and escape from a room full of dangers, but ends up being burned alive as Lucas rigged the game. Around a month later, in July 2017, Ethan, who for the past 3 years has thought Mia was in fact dead, has received an email from her out of the blue. The email says that he needs to go and pick her up from Dulvey in Louisiana, and although his friends think it's suspicious, Ethan needs to know what happened to her, so he makes his way there. Arriving, Ethan finds the front gate is locked, with it seeming that no one else is around. What is there though is the van that belonged to the Sewer Gators crew. More ominous is the script for the Sewer Gators episode sat on the seat in the van, which simply says, "Join us." Finding an alternate way round the house, Ethan spots a large man walking through the bayou surrounding the place, unaware of course that this is Jack Baker, who subsequently disappears. He also finds Mia's driver's license, and it's almost as if someone has been leaving breadcrumbs for Ethan to follow. Entering the guest house, Ethan has a poke around and finds the walls of a load of missing persons posters on them, along with a list of people that have either died or have turned. He also comes across the dead body of Andre under the house. More importantly though, Ethan comes across Mia, who had been locked in a cell by Lucas as she'd had some violent outbursts. She is surprised to see Ethan there, and in truth, also seems to be disappointed that he's there. He explains that she'd sent him an email, but she denies it, saying that she can't remember much. She talks about them being a family now. A little bit weird. Moving through the basement of the guest house, Mia needs to sit down for a minute, and Ethan has a look around only to hear a crash coming from where he'd left her, returning to find that Mia is gone. However, Ethan is then attacked by Mia, who is different now and is being controlled. She stabs at him with a knife, and grabbing an axe, he seemingly kills her by striking her in the neck. Then he hears the phone ringing and it's Zoe Baker. She tells him he shouldn't have gone there, but he can find a way out through the attic. Making his way up there though, Mia, who miraculously is still alive, attacks Ethan again, and she cuts his hand off using a chainsaw. She walks off while saying that she must contain the outbreak, and Ethan then struggles to the attic where he finds a gun, using it to fight off his wife, who comes at him with the chainsaw. Defeating her, he is then knocked out by Jack. Coming to now and again, he sees both himself and Mia are being dragged to the main house by Jack. Coming to again later on, he looks down to see that his hand has been stapled back on by Zoe, who isn't there herself, but Ethan has been placed at the table for the Bakers' dinner time, where they are feasting on what looks like human remains. Lucas throws some of it at Ethan, and Jack cuts Lucas's hand off. Jack then tries to force feed Ethan, in the process stabbing him in the face with a knife. Marguerite storms off, as do Lucas and Jack, leaving Ethan there with a strange old woman presumed to be Grandma. Jack is soon back though, and so begins a game of cat and mouse, with Ethan trying to evade the patriarch of this messed up family. Zoe calls again. This time she says that Ethan should be able to get out via the main hall. Ethan speaks with the sheriff's deputy, who had been sent there as the police were in the process of investigating the multiple disappearances. He's suspicious of Ethan, assuming him to be responsible for the missing persons. Ethan tells the deputy the situation and wants the officer's gun, but naturally he refuses and gives Ethan a pocket knife instead, telling him to go to the garage and he'll meet him there. On getting there though, Jack kills the deputy and tries to kill Ethan. Eventually Jack grabs him and uses the deputy's gun to shoot himself, seemingly dying. With Jack now out of action, Ethan finds his way into the main hall, and Zoe tells him that he's going to need 3 special reliefs for the front door in order to get outside. Searching the upstairs, Ethan spots Marguerite walking around. To Ethan's utter shock, Jack is up and about, and his wound appears to be healing itself. Jack talks about his little girl having given them a gift. Solving strange puzzles in this house, Ethan encounters one of Evelyn's Molded. Taking it down and wondering what the hell it is he just saw, he ventures through the moulded infested basement and finds a morgue down there. The names here are of people taken and killed by the Bakers. Ethan finds one of the dog's head reliefs but is ambushed by Jack. However, Ethan is able to get some revenge on Jack for stomping on him earlier by sawing him in two with a chainsaw. Taking the dog's head relief with him, he finds the other two and gets outside. Going into the trailer there, which is where Zoe found Mia a couple of years ago, Zoe calls Ethan on the phone there telling him he's made it further than anyone else has before. Zoe tells him there's a serum they can make, but that they need the arm and the head of a D-series model, which remember was the version prior to the E-series Evelyn. She says that both her and Mia are infected, that they cannot leave the property until the infection is gone. Apparently Marguerite has hidden these two items in another part of the Baker Ranch, a building called the Old House. Finding his way in there, Ethan speaks with Mia through a fence, demanding answers as to what is going on, but their reunion is cut short by Lucas, who, with his arm having miraculously grown back again, drags Mia off somewhere. Ethan encounters Marguerite in the Old House too, who is being accompanied by many bugs. At one point she throws him from some steps, and he is forced to shoot her and she falls into a pit, but the pit quickly fills with a strange black liquid. Heading through the door Marguerite was trying to stop him going through, Ethan finds something grotesque inside there, but he needs the lantern that Marguerite carries round to unlock the door mechanism. Zoe calls once again and says that when he's found the serum, to meet her in the trailer. Going to grab the lantern from where Marguerite fell down, Ethan sees a slender long arm grabbing the lantern, and going down the tunnel there, he sees Marguerite as transformed into something hideous.
What the fuck? Well, that's special.
Inside the greenhouse, Ethan is forced to fight the mutated Marguerite, and despite her giving, birth to insects, he is able to defeat her and she crystallizes and crumbles away. Taking her lantern, Ethan heads on back to the locked door and opens it, heading through the dark and very creepy bedrooms here. Inside a back bedroom, he finds a secret doorway, and inside is the D-series, and Ethan takes the arm. That's one part down, now to find the head. Fighting his way up through the molded and going back to the trailer, Ethan is frustrated to find Zoe isn't in there. The phone rings, but it isn't Zoe, it's Lucas, who tells him to look in the fridge, and in there is the deputy's head with a note attached saying that he should look in the dissection room. On the way there, Ethan encounters Grandma in the dark, giving him quite the fright, and finds the deputy's headless body laid out on a gurney, so he has to shove his hand down the corpse's throat, and inside is a key. Inside the main house again, Ethan finds the key is for Lucas's old bedroom, and in the attic, he finds one of two keys to a door in the yard. The key is also for the door to the bedroom where Clancy had been held by Marguerite. In there, Ethan is able to find a trapdoor under the bed, and he follows the corridor to another part of the basement, where amongst grotesque things he finds the other keycard. Lucas calls again and tells Ethan to use the keycards to come and join the party, and inside a newly accessed area, Ethan watches a video where Lucas is showcasing the gift Evelyn gave to him and his family.
Ethan, hold on, I got something for you. Looky what I've got. You know what this is for? You know what Zoe wants to do with this? She thinks this thing is special. No, Ethan. That ain't special. This right here is special. You see, Ethan? Not everybody wants to turn back the clock. What? What, Evelyn? I'm just trying to show him. Not everybody wants to go back to how things were. Zoe's a stupid bitch. She doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all. Not everybody wants to turn back the clock. So Ethan, you can crawl around underneath that filthy, rotten house all you want looking for them ingredients, but you ain't gonna find a goddamn thing, Ethan. You'll make that serum? Ooh, baby. You're gonna have to come through me. You hear? Now, come on, Ethan. What do you say?
Moving through and surviving Lucas's traps in the area, as well as dealing with not only moulded but a fat moulded too, Ethan finds what remains of Clancy. The words "You're next" are stapled to his body along with the code for the escape room. Now, thankfully, Ethan found a tape inside the house which gave details of Lucas's traps to him, so he's able to navigate through this death trap and gets out without suffering the fate of being burned alive like poor Clancy. Naturally, Lucas is absolutely fuming that Ethan survived what Lucas had hoped would be a painful death, throwing a couple of sticks of dynamite inside the room, but Ethan thinks fast and drops them into the room next door, where Lucas is. They go off, but Lucas has already fled, but he'd done Ethan a massive favour and has left the D-series head there. Fighting his way through a lot more moulded, he finally makes it to Mia and Zoe. Cutting Zoe loose, he gives her the ingredients and she makes the serum, with there being just enough for 2 doses. One for Mia, one for Zoe. Unfortunately, before they can inject them, Jack shows up, now incredibly deformed and mutated. He grabs Ethan, who now has to fight mutated Jack in the boathouse. Destroying the weak spots on his body, Ethan brings him down, but Jack grabs him again, and he is forced to use one of the 2 serums on Jack, which finishes him off with him too crystallizing just like Marguerite did. Out on the dock, they realise that with only 1 dose, one of them is going to have to stay there, and the obvious choice to receive the serum is Mia, since Ethan has gone through all of this in order to save his wife. Zoe is hurt and very angry, whilst Ethan and Mia board a small dinghy and use it to escape, disappearing into the bayou, with Ethan saying that he'll send help. A little further down the river, after a conversation where Ethan asks Mia if she had anything to do with what happened here, to which Mia responds that she doesn't remember a thing, they spot the sunken and destroyed tanker, Annabelle. The mold then starts to engulf the boat and Ethan and Mia are thrown into the water and they both pass out. Mia comes to not long after and comes across Ethan amongst the Annabelle's wreckage. Approaching him though, he's carried off by the mold. Mia needs to head inside the wrecked tanker and look for him. It's not long before Mia starts to see flashbacks. She's starting to remember that she knows this tanker as she was on it when it sank. She sees what remains of the crew, some melded into a gross mass of moulded bodies, others who died trying to hide. She also sees hallucinations of Evelyn, who is still under the impression that Mia is her actual mother, and she asks Mia if she's remembering. Evelyn is angry because Mia said they could be family, and Evelyn spawns more monsters from the mold that Mia, who is currently unarmed, has to avoid. Getting up to one of the upper levels of the tanker, Mia finds Evelyn waiting for her there and a VHS tape is there. Watching it, Mia is getting brought up to speed pretty quickly as to what her involvement was in regard to all this. After watching the tape, Evelyn asks her if she remembers now and if they can be a family like before. Mia says no and that they never were a family. Evelyn says she doesn't need Mia anymore, laughs in her face and then disappears. It seems that the serum Ethan gave Mia worked, as she is no longer under the control of Evelyn. Needing to find Ethan, Mia heads to the bridge where she sees a camera feed and Ethan is down in the engine room encased within the mold. Whilst inside there, Ethan somehow speaks with the sane Jack Baker, and Zoe is there too. They're speaking through this shared collective mind. Jack says he's sorry and that he'd never have hurt Ethan if he could have helped it. He says that his family are good people, even Lucas. Well, that's not true, but we'll get to that. He says that Evelyn did this to them, and that Mia sent the email to Ethan while she was being controlled by Evelyn, because Evelyn wanted Ethan there to complete her family. Jack begs Ethan to save his family by stopping her. Back with Mia, who's now found her way to Ethan, she rips away the mold holding him inside and shoves him out of the door of the tanker, placing something into his hand. It's a vial that Mia has been carrying ever since she arrived here, which has E001 written on it. Closing the door, the room she's in is then engulfed by the mold, and she says that she's saving Ethan's life, asking him to kill Evelyn. Emerging from the tanker near to the Abercrombie salt mines, which were closed around the late 1800s, Ethan spots a bunch of radio equipment there. And from what it looks like, helicopters have been spotted flying over the area. He also hears something over the radio.
Alpha 1, this is Bravo 1. Do you read?
This is Alpha 1. Report. Did you find anything?
A thorough search of the Baker property revealed 0 survivors. Repeat, 0 survivors. We did find evidence of a skirmish.
Evelyn?
Negative. However, we did find several encrypted messages from the Baker's son Lucas to an unknown third party. You can probably guess who that was.
That's just great. We've had reports he's in the abandoned mine south of the property. I'm gonna go have a look.
Roger that. We'll meet you at those coordinates.
If you encounter Evelyn, orders are shoot to kill. Repeat, shoot to kill.
Pushing on and needing to pass through the salt mines, Ethan comes across more molded and eventually comes to what appears to be a laboratory. So what has Lucas been up to exactly? Well, let's go back to his childhood, and we'll see that Lucas wasn't the good person Jack was making him out to be. Lucas has always been a little bit mentally unstable. His mother took him for brain scans at one point in order to be able to get him a diagnosis for something, but young Lucas was obviously more excited about the new puzzle his mother had bought him. He writes in his journal about a boy at his school, Oliver, who frequently bullied him, and one day Lucas invited Oliver to his house and locked him in the attic using a remote. Oliver would eventually die up there from starvation and dehydration, and was left up there to rot by Lucas. Lucas would win many awards for engineering and would design a switch that he built into a lamp in his room to prevent Zoe from going up into his attic. After studying at Louisiana State University, Lucas would return home and became increasingly antisocial, even going so far as to making an FU list detailing all the times he'd been wronged by his family. After Lucas had been infected, he was contacted by the Connections, who gave him a serum that nullified Evelyn's control over him. He was to spy on his family, and Evelyn and his family believed that Lucas was part of Evelyn's little family. Lucas would report back to the Connections regularly, and his observations on Evelyn were interesting. He noted her desire for family, which Lucas thought was really messed up, even more so when he learned that Evelyn genuinely thought that Mia was her mother. The Connections, however, were unsure as to why exactly she was seeking out family. Lucas would also reveal that Evelyn was making Jack kidnap people from off the street to add to the family. This is where the molded creatures were coming from. But Lucas also says that she seems to be aging pretty fast. She's getting old. The Connections were likely interested in the regenerative properties of the mold too, as when the initial infection takes place, the mold starts to replace the cells in the body, which would result in arms and legs growing back within minutes. It's only when the mold reaches the brain that the victim becomes attuned to Evelyn, therefore under her complete control. This is of course why Mia had attacked Ethan, as she was being controlled by Evelyn. Anyway, the Connections, who by this point were working in the labs inside the abandoned salt mines, made Lucas their lead researcher, much to the dismay of the researchers there, with one of them even having gotten a master's in microbiology from Stanford. Especially since all Lucas wanted to do was put the molded in a room and make them fight each other to the death and perform useless autopsies on them. Lucas would end up betraying the Connections though, and he locked their researchers in a room to be killed by molded, reporting it as an accident. He wanted to steal the mold for himself so he could sell it to a rival organization, but back to Ethan. He finds from a document in the lab here that the mold's commonly used term is the mutamycete, and Evelyn was created from introducing the mutamycete genome into Evelyn when she was just a stage 4 human embryo and was cultivated over 38 to 40 weeks. Also there, he finds a case which contains mixing equipment needed to destroy an E-series asset such as Evelyn. Using the vial Mia gave him, Ethan creates a necrotoxin and sets off in search of Evelyn. Seeing hallucinations of Evelyn and having to fight his way out of the rest of the mines, Ethan comes out and is now back at the Baker property. Heading back into the house, he encounters Evelyn. Ethan injects her and she is revealed to be Grandma. This lines up with what Lucas said to the Connections about Evelyn seeming to have aged. Old Evelyn asks why everyone hates her, and despite dying and melting into a black goo, she manages to merge with the rest of the mold there, and Ethan shoots Evelyn in the face. She eventually grabs Ethan and launches him outside, inflicting injury on him, but the BSAA has shown up there and throws Ethan an experimental anti-BOW weapon called the Albert 01, and it uses special ramrod ammunition. After a few rounds to her face again, Evelyn is defeated and she calcifies. Ethan is approached by Chris Redfield, who helps him onto a chopper, and he looks out across the now destroyed home of the Baker family, who were victims just as he was. Mia is there on the chopper too, and on the side of the chopper is the word Umbrella. Are they back now? Well, with Ethan's story on hold for now, we'll focus on Chris's mission here, which is codenamed Operation Lurking Fear. So Chris, still working for the BSAA, has, albeit begrudgingly, teamed up with Blue Umbrella, and yes, these are the remnants of the old Umbrella, now a PMC who are dedicated to righting the wrongs of their past involvement in various bioterrorist incidents, and the ripple effect of their bioweapons ending up on the black market. They want to clean up the mess they made, apparently. I'm not buying it. I just feel like they want to get their hands on another bioweapon, but anyway. Blue Umbrella were actually the ones that helped provide the clues surrounding Glenn Arias' Animality virus, as the CCTV footage they managed to obtain, as well as the locations of the outbreaks, meant that Rebecca was able to find out the drinking water was the trigger virus. Despite their willingness to want to clean up the colossal mess they'd made, Chris does not trust this lot, not one bit, and who could blame him? Anyway, Blue Umbrella want Lucas Baker extracted, so Chris is to head into the mines and track him down, as he will have information on the Connections. They've already lost 3 of their best men apparently. Chris is given their last known locations. A short way into the salt mine, Chris finds the first of the 3 men, who has a bomb strapped to his neck, a horrid trap set by Lucas, who has disguised himself as one of the men. He straps a bomb to Chris's wrist and he blows the other guy's head off in front of him. He walks away, releasing E-type mutamycete spores into the air. Thankfully, Chris has an oxygen filter in his helmet, and after speaking with his contact and expressing his frustration at having to work with Umbrella, Chris finds the second soldier, who gets beheaded by Lucas in a terrible way. He finds the third one too, but after saving him, Lucas activates the bomb on the guy's neck and this kills him. Lucas then activates a 10-minute timer for the bomb on Chris's wrist. Chris has to fight a fat molded, but defeating it, he's able to freeze the bomb just in time by using some liquid nitrogen. In pursuit of Lucas again, Chris avoids more traps and Molded, and finds the main underground lab that the connections were working out of. Chris confronts Lucas as he's at his computer, but Lucas, very panicked, runs off. On the PC in this room, Lucas was in the process of sending all the E-data that he and the connection staff had compiled. This data is still being processed, so Chris needs to stop it. A little further on, Chris is attacked by Lucas, but after a brief struggle, Chris shoots him. Lucas then mutates and Chris fights and destroys the mutated Lucas, afterward destroying the servers there so whoever is trying to buy the stolen data from Lucas will not receive it. Back at the Baker property, Chris is disappointed that he wasn't able to save the Baker family, but a woman contacts him to tell him a perimeter wall has been set up around the estate and that the mold has been contained. But with this angle done, it's time to find out what happened to Zoe. After Ethan had given Mia the serum and left Zoe there on the dock, she had wandered into the bayou and basically she crystallized. Also, Jack Baker has a brother, Joe, also a former Marine. Joe is out in the bayou and sees two BSAA operatives talking about something. Joe sees a woman lying on the ground and recognizes her as his niece, Zoe. He thinks the two men are responsible for the state of his niece and he knocks them out, taking Zoe back to his shack. Despite Jack living on the Baker ranch, Joe lives off the grid and hasn't seen his brother or the rest of the family or that matter since 2014. Joe was unaware of the mold situation but did encounter a mutated alligator, and he thought it was the result of government research, becoming very suspicious of the BSAA's involvement in the area. With Zoe back at his shack, and also having taken one of the BSAA guys captive, Joe is demanding to know where the monsters he's encountered have come from. The guy gets a beating from Joe, and he tells him Zoe is infected and dying. The guy mentions that there's a cure, that they were on their way to get her treatment. The guy tells Joe where the men are with the cure, and he sets off. His fists are the only weapon he needs, as Joe here is pretty handy when it comes to a scrap. Thankfully, the Molded's heads are pretty squishy too, so Joe gets to work. Getting to the shack that contains the cure, Joe finds it has been overrun by Molded and finds the cure, but on going back to his own shack, he finds it's on fire. Rushing inside, he administers the cure to Zoe, but it seems to have no effect. The soldier tells Joe that it isn't a full dose, and that if he frees him, he can take Joe and Zoe to the base, and there will be a full dose there. But the man is grabbed by a swamp man and is killed, with the swamp man trying to take Zoe. Placing her onto a boat, Joe is able to escape with her, and the swamp man lets out a roar, whilst Joe's shack blows up behind him. A little further downriver, Joe comes across the perimeter wall that had been set up to contain the mold. Getting eyes on the base the guy was talking about, Joe leaves Zoe in a safe place and heads in to try and obtain the cure. Thing is, there's no one here, only Molded and no cure. He does however find out that the cure has been stored on a paddle boat nearby. So making his way over there, Joe encounters Swamp Man again, and the two have a fist fight with Joe managing to stun him so he can make an escape. He also has to take out infected gators too. Getting onto the paddle boat, Joe is able to smash and bash his way through the monsters on board the wreck, and uses the synthesis machine there in order to synthesize a cure. He finally has a full dose, and now needs to return to Zoe. Swamp Man shows up once again and Joe fights him again, this time ripping his head off with his bare hands. With this annoying monstrosity out the way, Joe makes it back to his niece. But yep, Swamp Man is back and grabs Zoe before Joe is able to administer the cure, disappearing into the bayou with her. Joe jumps into the boat, gives chase, and moves through a large open area until he reaches the Dulvey Parish Church and enters.
It's a goddamn sacrilege.
Jack? What the fuck? God damn it, Jack! Don't you remember your brother? Don't do it! Don't you touch her! Jack! Let me the fuck out of here! I'm your family! How the fuck can you do this to me? Get me the fuck out of here, Jack!
Now thankfully Joe's coffin ends up washing up on the shore not far from the Baker Ranch itself, and he hears a mayday call from Blue Umbrella and the BSAA stating that they're under attack by an unknown bioweapon. Must be Jack. A short way up the path here, he's able to find a prototype weapon. It's an advanced multi-purpose gauntlet, and it packs a serious wallop. Moving through the old house and through the backyard where the soldiers are dead, Joe moves into the main house and he has a final showdown with his brother. The gauntlet gives Joe the edge in this fight, but how did Jack return after Ethan had previously defeated him and injected him with a serum? Well, a note outside in the yard states that on his tissue samples being analysed, Jack's cells showed an extraordinary resilience to both physical and chemical damage. His cells weren't haywire, basically, and he was reborn, if you like, as the Swamp Man. Anyway, after a tough fight, Jack is finally defeated.
This is farewell from the family, brother.
Now Jack is dealt with, Joe goes over to Zoe and is finally able to administer the cure. She comes to and is relieved to see her uncle. Chris and his squad move in and he tells the pair that they're here to help. Thankfully, Zoe is checked over and she's going to be fine. Chris then has Ethan on the phone, who wishes to speak with Zoe, and she thanks Ethan for not forgetting about her, with it revealed that he was the one who asked Chris and his men to try and find her. In the Dulvey parish, the incident was covered up as a gas leak. It was described as a leak of natural gas that had built up over time. It was also reported that Jack and the rest of the Baker family had perished in the incident, with it apparently being 10 years before the area would be habitable again. After the Dulvey incident, Ethan and Mia underwent operations to remove any mold that had grown inside their bodies. They were then placed in witness protection in order to protect them from the connections and were relocated by the BSAA to Eastern Europe. The protection was more so because of Mia's now former employment with the connections. She made a deal with the BSAA that she would tell them what she knew about the connections, and that by doing this, her secret life would be kept a secret from Ethan. Mia and Ethan would later get married, again, and have a child, a girl named Rosemary, who, because of what her parents went through, was put through rigorous testing to ensure that she was okay. Ethan would also receive basic combat training in order to be able to protect his family should anyone try and come for them. Nonetheless, the family was still under constant surveillance by the BSAA. Mia and Ethan had a bit of tension though, as even 3 years later, Mia did not want to talk about what happened in Louisiana. Anytime Ethan tried to bring it up, she would blow up at him. As for Zoe, she moved to New Orleans after this, becoming a reporter. She began her own little investigation into what occurred at her family's ranch, finding very little in regard to the shady connections and their bioweapon Evelyn. She discovered that Ethan and Mia were living in Eastern Europe, but the BSAA wanted their location kept secret, so she was not able to contact them. She did receive a letter from Mia at some point along with a photo of Rosemary. She also received a mysterious letter from someone who told her that Chris Redfield had left the BSAA after an act of insubordination in regard to the Dulvey incident. On the back of this letter were the words, "It's not over." It's February 2021, and Mia is reading a local tale called Village of Shadows for young Rosemary. Ethan voices his disapproval at the choice of book, saying that the subject matter is a bit dark for their 6-month-old daughter, but Mia insists. He reminds her that they moved here so that she would not have to deal with any of that kind of stuff, and Mia snaps, saying there's nothing wrong with her memory. Ethan then puts Rose to bed, and going back downstairs, Mia has been cooking a local recipe and has a local wine to drink, and she and Ethan get ready to sit down to eat. However, as they are once again arguing about Dulvey, Mia is shot in the shoulder and the lights go out, and she's brutally gunned down by someone unseen. Ethan, who hit the deck, is approached by Chris Redfield, who fires a number of shots into Mia which puts her down for good. Ethan is stunned. After being grabbed by the men with Chris, who has Rose in his arms, Ethan demands to know what's going on. Ethan is knocked out and put into a van, being transported somewhere when the van gets into a crash, and everyone there is killed except Ethan, and Rose has been taken. Finding some notes there, Ethan discovers that the target, Mia, had to be killed, and Ethan and Rose were to be transported somewhere else. Heading forward around a snow-covered path, seeing things lurking in the dark, Ethan comes to a small shack and there are odd markings on the walls along with a photo of a woman adorned with feathers. He hears a loud crash and finds the floor covered in blood with a newly formed hole in the wall, and not long after, Ethan looks over a village. A crow draws his attention to a magnificent castle in the distance. Heading down the hill, there doesn't seem to be anyone in this village, but it does seem that something is here. Something that is hunting in this village. Coming to a small house, Ethan meets a terrified local named Gregory, who almost blasts a hole in Ethan. They hear a roar and the man says that they are coming. He hands Ethan a handgun, but poor Gregory doesn't get to put up too much of a fight as he is pulled up into the ceiling and is killed. Ethan is then grabbed and pulled underneath the house where lots of dead bodies have been kept. In the darkness, Ethan sees something moving, but he is blindsided and is attacked by a lycan, a type of werewolf. It bites off part of his hand and he uses the gun Gregory gave him in order to kill it. Not far inside the village, Ethan is attacked again by lycans and has to fight for his life. Thankfully, the basic training he'd received from the BSAA helps him survive, although he's eventually confronted by a giant. the Lycans' leader Urias. In a stroke of pure luck, Ethan is spared as the church bells begin to toll, and all the Lycans leave the area. Ethan bandages up his hand and sees an elderly woman walking through the gate into the main area of the village. Following her and speaking to her, she makes reference to Rose. The old hag seems a little crazy, but she says that ever since Mother Miranda brought Rose to the village, they've fallen into darkness. The bells in the castle ring out and the old hag leaves and locks the gate behind her. Searching the village, Ethan finds more of those markings on the ground and deduces that Mother Miranda must be the woman he's been seeing on the photos all over the village. The markings match those he sees on gates around the place too. He finds the gate to the castle locked, and he needs 2 reliefs in order to get through it. Inside a nearby chapel, Ethan finds the portraits of 4 people, 2 either side of Mother Miranda, and this must indicate these 4 people are of pretty high standing. Moving through a cornfield and taking out more Lycans, Ethan enters a small storage shed and finds a woman and a man inside. They are father and daughter. The woman, named Elena, and her injured father Leonardo need help getting next door to Luisa's house. Having to deal with more Lycans, Ethan manages to get the gate to Luisa's open and they knock on the door. A rather overcautious man by the name of Julian answers and points a rifle in Ethan's face. Thankfully, Luisa comes out and diffuses the whole situation. She recognizes that Ethan is not local and tells Julian to go and check the grounds. Inviting Ethan inside whilst waiting by the entrance, he reads that the Lycans are something the villagers were aware of, stating that they broke in and were killing livestock. This put the people of the village in jeopardy, as many thought they'd struggle to survive the winter. Heading into the living room, it seems that a few people here are injured. One guy there has had a bit too much to drink and starts mouthing off about the dire nature of their situation. Luisa is choosing to remain positive though, despite her husband being out there somewhere. One of the women whose husband just died suggests they pray for Luisa's husband and they all pray to Mother Miranda. Ethan says he's heard the prayer before from the old hag, and Leonardo laughs, calling her crazier than a bag of rats, something that Luisa takes exception to. Leonardo then starts to scream out in pain, knocking over a lantern which starts a fire, and he plunges his machete into Luisa. Leonardo is turning into a Lycan, it seems, and kills everyone in the room apart from Ethan and Elena, who after shooting Leonardo to stop him look for a way to escape. Ethan tries to use a vehicle to smash their way out of the place, but it's no use, so they climb up the broken and unstable stairwell. This doesn't go well as Leonardo shows up, falls into the fire, and so does Elena, meaning that Ethan is on his own again. Outside Luisa's place though, he does receive the other relief to open the path to the castle, so that's a positive, I guess. However, he hears a commotion on the other side of the gate and sees Mother Miranda kill Julian, disappearing into the cornfield. He encounters the old hag again, who says that death has visited them all, obviously talking about Luisa, Elena, and the others. Opening up the path to the castle, Ethan tries to activate a lever, but he's approached by someone who appears to be able to command metal objects, and the man incapacitates Ethan, dragging him somewhere. He is brought before Mother Miranda and the 4 individuals whose portraits are in the chapel. These 4 are from the 4 houses of the village. Their ancestors were the 4 kings back in the medieval times, and are from House Dimitrescu, House Beneviento, House Moreau, and House Heisenberg. This explains their high standing. They are fighting over who gets Ethan. Heisenberg wants to put on a show, and Dimitrescu wants him for her 3 daughters in the castle to make him suffer. Miranda chooses to let Heisenberg do his little show, so Ethan is thrown into the deep end and has to escape Lycans, Urias, and a massive death trap in order to survive. He's able to use the spikes here to break his cuffs though, and as far as Miranda and the 4 lords think, he is now dead, which can work to his advantage. Emerging in a small vineyard, Ethan meets the Duke. The Duke is a travelling merchant who says that he's heard of Ethan, a hero searching for his daughter. The Duke says that the castle arouses suspicion, but anyway, the Duke sells weapons, ammo, and can provide weaponry upgrades for Ethan. Entering the castle's front entrance, Ethan sees a portrait of Alcina Dimitrescu's daughters, who are named Bella, Cassandra, and Daniela. He also sees that the Duke has regular business discussions with Alcina, and that she regularly takes delivery of humans, mostly female, but occasionally the odd male too. Inside the main hall, Ethan reads an inscription on the door, but he's swarmed by flies. And these flies are actually the 3 daughters, and they drag Ethan to a bedroom where Alcina waits. She is surprised to see that Ethan is in fact still alive. She cuts his hand and Alcina drinks his blood, saying that it's a little stale. She then has her daughters put Ethan up by way of hooks through his hands and they leave. Pulling himself free, Ethan needs to see if Rose is in this castle. In a side room, the Duke is there. How on earth did he get here? Anyway, he tells Ethan that perhaps Lady Alcina is keeping Rose in her private chambers. Right, so Alcina had been born into nobility at some point, and it's not really known just how old she is, but sometime after the Great War, World War I, and before the Second World War, she had been a jazz singer, being part of a group that called themselves Miss D and the Pool Boys. But what her bandmates probably didn't know is that Alcina was born with a rare condition in her blood, inherited from her ancestors. One of her ancestors, as mentioned, was one of the 4 kings, a man called Cesare, one of 4 people who had founded the village. At some point after the war, she had returned to the village and was implanted with a cadu by Mother Miranda. Remember, these are the parasitic organisms that came from the mold. Although Alcina reacted favourably to the organism, obtaining regenerative abilities and growing very tall, she would require blood, like a vampire, in order to survive. This made her an unsuitable vessel for Eva's consciousness, but she would nonetheless serve on Miranda's council as one of the 4 lords. Searching parts of this section of the castle, Ethan discovers that the Dimitrescu line have long been known for their winemaking techniques, with Alcina's best vintage being called Sanguis Virginis. This translates as Maiden's Blood, and the wine is said to be made and then stored inside a special bottle adorned with silver flowers. Upstairs, he is chased by one of the daughters, Cassandra. Ethan has to run for it and escapes down into the cellar, where he spots Alcina. Waiting for her to leave, he descends into what is a dungeon, and he encounters creatures called Marika. They are what remain of the women that Alcina had shipped to her. They were female servants for Alcina and her daughters, but if they did one tiny thing wrong, they would be drained of their blood and would be revived through the mold. Working through them, Ethan has to fight Bella inside the pantry, but upon accidentally shooting in the window in there, it appears that it weakens Bella. Using this in order to get the upper hand, Ethan is able to kill her, and she, in the same way Ethan saw at the Baker house, calcifies and crumbles onto the ground. Finding the bottle he'd read about earlier, Ethan uses it to access a secret passageway, and he's able to get a key to the castle's courtyard. Ethan is eventually accosted by another of the daughters, but uses the key he had obtained to get into the courtyard, and heads into Lady Alcina's private chambers. He hears her shouting, and she's just discovered that Bella is dead. Ethan is in big trouble now. After working his way through another part of the cellar, he moves up onto the balcony of Alcina's chambers, and manages to overhear a conversation between her and Miranda. She tells Miranda that Ethan escaped Heisenberg and that he's currently on the rampage in her castle, and has already killed one of her daughters. She wants to kill Ethan, but Miranda says no, and this causes a very angry Alcina to throw her vanity console and storm out of the room. To his dismay though, Rose isn't there. Alcina did leave her key there though, so Ethan grabs it, but on trying to leave through the door, Alcina walks in and slams Ethan so hard into the floor that he goes straight through it back down into the depths of the castle once more. Attempting to use a lever to raise a gate, Alcina sneaks up on Ethan, chopping his hand clean off, and after evading her, he gets onto an elevator, sticking his hand back on by way of that magic goop juice. With his hand reattached, Ethan uses the key he'd obtained to access the castle's annex. This place has a concert hall in it, but much more important and interesting are some documents on a dresser upstairs. A book shows that Mother Miranda introduced something we mentioned earlier, the cadu, to Alcina's daughters. The 3 daughters were likely maids at some point, and after having the cadu introduced via Miranda's experimentation, Alcina adopted them. One strange thing happened though, as an insect flew out of one of the girls' mouths, and it was a fly. A couple of days later, the flies had begun to consume the flesh of the 3 young women, and it was discovered the effect that cold air had on these flies as they dropped dead, which goes a long way to explain why the air weakened Bella. It seems that after the flies devoured the 3 women's bodies, they'd started to mimic the bodies they'd eaten as a collective. Another book downstairs described the flies as similar to blowflies. They're carnivorous and need to consume meat, which is why Alcina wanted Ethan so she could feed him to her 3 daughters, and these flies mimic a human in order to capture their prey. The flies come about through the cadu laying eggs in its host. Anyway, in the library next door, Ethan is confronted by Daniela. Luckily, there's a massive skylight in this room, and on opening it, she is weakened and Ethan puts her down. 2 down, 1 to go. He manages to get to the roof of the castle where he encounters flying Marika. During his time in the castle, Ethan found 2 masks needed for a set of statues in the main hall. Moving across the rooftops, he finds another one here too. A little later, after fighting and killing the final daughter, Ethan obtains the 4th and final mask, so now he can get the hell out of this castle. Moving through the door he's able to unlock with the masks, Ethan comes to a place called the Tower of Worship. Inside a sarcophagus here, Ethan is able to find a dagger. So this dagger is special. It's from way back in medieval times, and is said to be coated with many poisons from many continents that have been used to slay demons and monsters. It's called the Dagger of Death's Flowers. Taking it, Ethan is grabbed by Alcina, who is fuming at him for what he's done in killing her beloved daughters. Ethan plunges the Dagger of Death's Flowers into Alcina's side, and she is in a lot of pain. She then transforms into something grotesque. She grabs Ethan and throws him onto the tower where he has to do battle with her. Shooting the exposed Alcina damages her greatly. They both fall to the bottom of the tower, and she is finally dead. A plinth rises up, and on it sits a strange yellow container. Grabbing it opens up the exit for the castle, and Ethan is now outside again. Finally, a little way up the path and through a tunnel, Ethan hears the ramblings of the old hag. Speaking with her, she places an odd-looking key inside a box and says that Ethan is too late as Rose is to be sacrificed in an upcoming ceremony. A life for a life. She does say too, however, that the crests of the 4 bloodlines may open the path he seeks. Using the key the old hag placed inside the box, Ethan uses it to emerge into a ceremony site, and here sit 4 large statues of the 4 kings that used to rule over this land. Speaking with the Duke, Ethan learns to his horror that Rose's head is in this flask, and if he wants the other 3 flasks, it's likely that the other 3 lords have them, so he'll need to go and kill the lords. He tells Ethan to seek out the house in the village with the red chimney. Going over to the house with the red chimney and gaining access, Ethan takes down the lichen inside and finds the key, and it turns out that it attaches to the key he's currently got, so Ethan goes back to open the next gate. A journal on the table gives us an indication of how Rose ended up in the yellow flasks. The person who lived there writes about how Mother Miranda had asked them to gather some drugs and tools, and a couple of days later was to take these items to a cave church. There they saw Mother Miranda and the 4 lords gathered round, with Miranda holding a small child, Rose. Miranda whispered and Rose turned into a white crystal. Miranda told the villager that this is the chosen child before placing her into the 4 separate flasks, which left the villager confused and wondering who this poor child was. Ethan also, if going to the small chapel, finds computer equipment there, and on it is a report by Chris's guys which shows that they're operating inside the village and have been looking for both Ethan and Rose. But going back to the central area, the modified key that Ethan has only opens 1 gate, so off he goes in order to take down one Donna Beneviento, one of the lords. Walking through Potter's Fields, there are many gravestones here as this is a place where many villagers were buried during the Spanish flu epidemic that killed Miranda's daughter Eva. Ethan sees creepy dolls hanging from the trees, and after crossing a bridge he sees Mia. She's holding Rose, telling him to go with her, and there's something she has to tell him. That Rose feels different and that he has to fix her. Ethan approaches an area with a gravestone and glowing flowers surrounding it. Entering a small building, Ethan finds an elevator and uses it to ascend, coming out right next to the Beneviento estate. Entering, he sees a portrait of Donna Beneviento and her doll Angie, both of whom Ethan has already met, back when he was dragged before Miranda and the 4 lords. Donna's parents died when she was very young and she developed some pretty serious mental problems. She would only speak to others through the doll her father made her, who she called Angie, and in order to cope with the trauma of losing both of her parents, she made dolls. During her early adulthood, Donna was implanted with the Cadu as part of Mother Miranda's experimentation, but this left an abscess on the side of her face so she'd cover her face when in public. She trusted Miranda as, according to the gardener in his journal, Miranda had adopted Donna at some point. Because of Donna's mental instability, Miranda considered her to be an unfit vessel for Eva's consciousness, and like Alcina, she too would go on to serve on Miranda's council. It's possible that Donna could have had a daughter herself by the name of Claudia, as the grave in the middle of the flowers is for a young girl called Claudia, who died at some point. Claudia had been buried along with a family heirloom that belonged to Berengario, who according to legend was a mutant himself and one of the 4 kings that ruled over the area. Anyway, moving through the house, it seems there's no one about. Going to the lower floor of the house, Ethan finds Angie sitting on a chair with the rose flask and the lights flicker, with Angie, or rather Donna's voice, telling Ethan that she'd make a much better daughter than Rose and asks Ethan to stay with her forever. The lights come back on and Ethan finds a mannequin on the table with a likeness of Mia, and it contains various items in it that he needs in order to escape. While doing so, however, he sees something horrific. A massive deformed baby crawling towards him, calling him Dada. Avoiding it and managing to get the elevator working again, Ethan is confronted by Donna's dolls, led by Angie, who attack him. This happens due to Donna having divided her Cadu between her dolls, thus allowing her to control them. So running around the house, finding Angie and stabbing her with scissors, causes the dolls to cease and Ethan snaps out of whatever delirium he's in, finding Donna dead on the floor next to Angie, and Donna calcifies. He takes the flask and leaves this place, but what on earth was real here and what wasn't? It turns out the flowers in this area cause a hallucinogenic effect and project the fears of one's mind into what they perceive to be reality, which is why Ethan saw Rose as this deformed baby, as he's learned that she'd been separated and placed into the flasks. This was his mind being fearful of what will remain of his daughter when she's been put back together. A note shows that the Beneviento gardener was exposed to these flowers and himself had his own visions and hallucinations of his deceased wife. This was an effect from Donna herself, from the Cadu organism inside her, as she secreted a substance that gave her control over these plants, which had been exposed to the mutamycete. Ethan also received the next part for the winged key, so he uses it to pass through an area in order to go after the next lord and obtain the 3rd flask. He encounters a creature known as the Varkalak, a rare mutation of lichen created by another of the 4 lords, Salvatore Moreau, who injected wolf's blood into the spine of a lichen. They are effectively very vicious attack dogs. Putting it down, he finds Louisa's husband in here, as he died to the Varkalak after he'd left to get help. In this area where Ethan had previously fought a load of Lycans, he sees the area is now filled with the gross substance. He passes through a fishing village and into a series of tunnels where he sees the third flask and grabs it. Salvatore Moreau is there and he begs Ethan not to take the flask as the other lords will laugh at him. Naturally, Ethan doesn't care, so Moreau essentially traps Ethan, meaning that he will need to find a way out of Moreau's patch, if you like. He finds a note written by a fisherman, which is an account of seeing his friend get eaten by a huge fish. He soon encounters the big fish he'd just read about. Using a boat to get to a cave, it seems Chris's guys are here, and sure enough, Ethan is grabbed by one of them and wrestled to the ground. Chris is here and one of his squad informs him that they are getting some serious motion readings in this place. He mentions Miranda and Ethan asks how Chris is involved. He tells Ethan to leave it alone because he's out of his depth. They discuss a sample, and it's apparently related to the mold. The massive fish approaches the shack they're in and destroys it with Ethan being flung into the water. He emerges on a dock and Moreau crawls out onto it, indicating that he is the massive fish and is able to mutate at will. He says the exit is underwater and that Ethan is done. He says that Ethan is too late as Miranda is already preparing for the ceremony. Moreau then begins to vomit horrid green stuff and falls back into the water, mutating into the massive fish again. Ethan heads into a control room and attempts to use the controls to open up the sluice gate to drain the reservoir, but it needs power. The Duke is here too. Seriously, how is this guy getting about so easily? But let's look at what happened to Moreau. When it comes to Moreau's backstory, most of it is shrouded in mystery, but from the tattoo on his arm, it's possible he was either in the Navy, a sailor, or was simply a fisherman. From signs in the area, the Moreau family ran a clinic here, indicating they may have been a family of physicians. Like the two lords we've seen, Miranda implanted him with a Kadu, but his body reacted badly to it, with him becoming the monstrosity we see. Predictably, Miranda considered Moreau a failure and not a suitable vessel for either. Miranda, as with the others, recognised his ancestors being a key part of the village's history, and he too would serve on her council. Miranda would give him a laboratory on the hill, and he would carry out Kadu experiments up there, resulting in more Lycans and, of course, the Varkalak. Moreau, though, considered Miranda to be his actual mother. He was concerned about what would happen to him once Mother Miranda got her Eva back, that he'd be abandoned. Anyway, from a diagram on the wall by the gate controls, Ethan discovers that he needs to go to 2 windmills and move them in order to get the power restored. Finding the first crank, things don't go to plan as it breaks, so he must go to the other windmill. Moving across the platforms above the submerged fishing village and dodging Moreau, Ethan is able to get to the second windmill, moves it, and takes the crank back to the first windmill and cranks that one up too. With the power now restored, Ethan heads back to the sluice gate controls and drains the water, forcing Moreau out, and in a now accessible part of the fishing village, he fights the mutated fishman whilst dodging his stomach acid rain, eventually killing him. Now that the water has been drained and Moreau has been defeated, Ethan has what he needs and exits the reservoir. Heading into where he first encountered Moreau, Heisenberg's voice comes through, and he says that he could lend Ethan a hand. He proposes Ethan go to a stronghold just outside the village and get his flask. If he can do that, then he'll pass. Having found another part of the winged key, Ethan heads on over to the central part of the village in order to go through Heisenberg's trial. When there, he sees Heisenberg has put up a load of signs, taunting him. Before going to the stronghold, Ethan uses the crank he's got to access new areas, and he finds a cave that itself contains a black wriggling substance. Reviewing notes from Chris's squad who were previously down here, they report that after some analysis on the substance, they confirm a 99.95% match to the mold found in Dulvey. That this village's mutamycete was the source of the mutamycete that killed the Baker family. But of course we already know that. Apparently it's spread underneath the entire village and is a part of a network of consciousness. They float the idea that the organism here acts as a data storage of sorts. But back to it. Moving up to the stronghold, Ethan has to fight a massive mutant along with a bunch of Lycans, but does gain access to the stronghold itself, where he has to face off against more Lycans. The stronghold itself is where the Lycans were banished to after they had become failed Kadu experiments. Once Miranda had heard about Rose, she no longer needed the villagers as she'd found the vessel deemed suitable for Eva, so the Lycans were set loose on them. A very old note left in the stronghold mentions an army having to hold back heretics, and the king had ordered a withdrawal from the area. This means that the village was the site of a battle, and that the village was subsequently abandoned. But even as far back as this note, which is likely century old, the soldiers were curious about the village and where all the people from it went, as they discovered the giant statues of the 4 kings along with murals carved on the walls. So, what happened to the people? Further into the stronghold, Ethan comes face to face with the Lycans' leader, Urias. Defeating him, Ethan passes through a short tunnel and finds that there are crystallized remains in here. Are these the remnants of something that happened to the village all those years ago? Grabbing the 4th and final flask, Ethan hears from that fool Heisenberg again. He tells Ethan to come to his factory by putting the flasks into the altar back in the village. He does this by placing them all into the giant's chalice and taking the chalice up the hill to the ceremony site and placing it in the contraption there. It's revealed to be a large elevator. Walking across the bridge over to Heisenberg's factory, he says he'd like to speak to him about Rose and Miranda. So he does.
Look, you got this all wrong. Tell me what I'm talking about. Shut your fucking hole! Sorry about that. Take a seat. Listen, Ethan, you're being played.
What are you talking about? You think this is a game?
I said sit! Lady, supersized bitch. Ugly ass psycho doll. And that moronic freak. Don't you get it? It's a test. To see if you're strong enough to be a part of Miranda's family.
I don't want to be a part of Miranda's family.
Neither did I, but here we are. And I'm next in line, right? Kill me, move up the chain. Well, fuck that!
I don't give a damn about your personal issues. I just want to fix my daughter.
So do I. Do you have any idea how powerful that kid is? Even Miranda's scared of her. Last time, you freak, I swear to God! You and me, Ethan. Together, we can go save Rose, and we can use her to grind Miranda into paste.
My daughter is not a weapon. Fuck you!
Last chance. You don't want to find out what's in that hole.
I'll take my chances.
You're futile.
Having to run from whatever this is, Ethan manages to evade it and fights various creatures that Heisenberg has been experimenting on. He comes out in a massive factory that is producing some sort of army, and also encounters the Duke down here too. Fighting his way through the various levels of the factory, Ethan comes up against creatures Heisenberg calls Soldat, which translates as soldier. Through his experimentation, Heisenberg had become frustrated at their lack of cognitive function. Implanting them with the Kadu, replacing the heart, he'd come up with multiple variations, but was again left frustrated at the ineffectiveness of these soldiers, as one would simply need to destroy the very obvious target on them, the reactor, in order to kill them. Having ascended the various levels in the factory, listening to Heisenberg waffling about how he wants to be free of Miranda, and getting chased by Propeller Man, who Ethan finds out is a failed experiment called Sturm, Ethan kills Sturm and manages to get back up to the top of the factory, where he meets Heisenberg again. Heisenberg decides that it's time to mutate, and fuses with the metal around him, becoming a mechanized abomination. He knocks Ethan off the top of a crane all the way down into the water below, much to the frustration of Ethan since he'd gone through all that effort. So what happened to Heisenberg, and why can he influence metal objects? Obviously the descendant of another of the 4 kings or founders of the village, Carl Heisenberg is a genius engineer, and he was implanted with the Kadu by Miranda. He showed great affinity to the organism and retained his appearance, intelligence, but unlike the others, Heisenberg was not under the influence of Miranda the way the other lords were. In regard to his power, the Kadu gave him similar organs to that of the electric ray. This means that he's able to pass electricity throughout his entire body, and this therefore allows him to be able to move and control metal. He views Miranda having sacrificed the villagers for her grand plan to revive Eva as selfish, and he sees through her treating them like her family when she really only sees them as mere tools to use in experiments. This is why he wants to build his army so he can take over from her. With his army not really powerful enough to go against Miranda, he sees Rose as the ultimate weapon that he can use to destroy her. But anyway, Ethan heads into another dark part of the factory.
I told you to leave it alone, Ethan. You are in the way.
What do you care, Chris? You killed my wife, you son of a bitch!
You think I killed Mia? That wasn't her. It was Miranda.
What?
She's a bioweapon. She changed her appearance and pretended to be Mia. Seems she also survived being shot, so now I'm here to finish the job.
Bullshit! Why don't you fucking tell me right away?
Because I knew you would want to be involved! And this job is hard enough without civilians getting in the way.
Why us, Chris? What the hell is going on?
All right, Ethan. All right. I guess I owe you an explanation. Hand me that wrench.
Right, yeah, so Miranda had found out about Rose because the BSAA had experienced a data leak, and Ethan and Mia's location, as well as the existence of Rose, was revealed. She then kidnapped Mia and then mimicked her, replacing her, and Ethan was none the wiser, even missing the subtle clues that this Mia was not his Mia. Her reading a local tale to Rose, the fact that she suddenly started wanting to cook local food and drink local wine. Chris goes on to explain that this is why they shot who Ethan thought was Mia, because they knew that she was an imposter. What the BSAA didn't account for was the fact that Miranda, despite being shot multiple times, was able to mimic a corpse, and it was at that point that she attacked the transport carrying Ethan and Rose and took her. Chris tells Ethan that everything that happened here, and also what happened to Ethan, Mia and the Baker family back in Dulvey, was all down to Miranda and her life's work. Chris explains that Miranda is insane, and Ethan looks through photos on Chris's phone, realizing that Miranda now has all 4 flasks and is about to begin the ceremony. Upon learning this, Ethan wants to destroy Miranda and get his daughter back, so Chris tells him that the tank here is polymer, so Heisenberg won't be able to influence it. He says that he's going to plant some explosives around the factory. Ethan then heads up in an elevator to fight Heisenberg, and fighting him, Ethan uses the tank and inflicts heavy damage. During the fight, Chris's explosives go off and Heisenberg is fuming, as his entire sold-out army is gone. Creating a whirlwind, Ethan manages to get back onto the tank and blasts Heisenberg in the face, killing him. Surviving a long fall to the ground, Ethan speaks with Chris, who tells him to wait there. Ethan sees Rose before him, and then Mia, but it's not her, it's Miranda. She then transforms into her true form, telling Ethan that Rose is the successor to Evelyn, her true and complete form, and she will grow to fully control the masses, telling him that Rose will become her Eva. She transforms into the old hag. She was Miranda all along, a disguise so she could spy on the villagers. She disappears and then reappears below him, ripping his heart out. Ethan then falls to the ground as Miranda tells him that he will become part of the network of consciousness, called the Megamycete, and he dies. One of Chris's squad members then report back that Ethan Winters is in fact dead. Basically, Chris's squad, the Hound Wolf squad, are here without the authorization of the BSAA. After the BSAA attempted to cover up their failed operation to destroy Evelyn in Munich and blame the Dulvey incident on a gas leak in order to avoid responsibility, Chris and a bunch of his loyal men and women went rogue in 2018. Chris had been very vocal about this cover-up, and the BSAA warned him that despite him being one of the BSAA's founding 11 members, he would have some form of action taken against him if he continued. He and his squad believed they could no longer trust the BSAA. They spent 3 years trying to investigate the origins of the mold, which the BSAA were fuming about, and he and his squad had discovered about Miranda mimicking Mia, as I explained earlier. Angry that Miranda murdered Ethan, Chris vows to make her pay. One of Chris's men quite rightly questions him as to why he didn't just let Ethan know about what their plan was. This is one decision that Chris feels immensely guilty about. Stepping out of his vehicle, Chris spots a BSAA Osprey in the sky, telling his Hound Wolf squad that their mission hasn't changed. They need to terminate Miranda. Moving to a ridge, the squad sniper, Umber Eyes, tells Chris to have a look through his scope. He sees the BSAA fast roping into the village, and to get eyes on what is sure to be the ceremony site, Chris orders one of the squad K9 to find out what the BSAA are doing there. Making his way through the village, which is now being engulfed by the mold, fighting off Lycans and Varkalak, Chris has his squad blow up a massive bunch of mold and heads down underneath the village. Down here he fights Urias' brother, Urias Stryer, who is effectively guarding the fungal root, a name also given to the Black God, which is causing the Mutamycete to engulf the village, indicating that this is possibly something that happened in the medieval times, and what wiped out the village a long time ago. After defeating and killing the giant, Chris approaches the Black God and attaches a bomb to a knife, throwing it into the fungal root. Also down here are the remnants of a civilization. This may indicate that the Black God, the root, destroyed the ancient civilization, and the villagers lived on top of it, completely unaware of its existence until Miranda stumbled upon it that one fateful day. It lay there just collecting the consciousness of dead people that had been buried in the area. The tunnel with the crystallized remains Ethan traveled through earlier could be evidence of the fungal root's complete destruction of the previous civilization. Anyway, Chris moves on and discovers Miranda's laboratory here. Chris is stunned to learn that this is somewhere Oswald E. Spencer had visited once during his younger years, and not only that, but he knew Miranda, and that he got an inspiration from the symbol he'd seen all over the village to start the Umbrella Corporation, making it the logo of the company. He finds photographs of Miranda holding Eva, photographs of Evelyn, but more importantly, he discovers someone else down there too. It's Mia. Worried that this could be more Miranda mimicry, Chris checks with his squad and they say Miranda is still at the ceremony site. He asks Mia why she's there. She says that she was caught and used in experiments. Chris makes contact with his squad and tells them that he's headed to the ceremony site. Mia then has a go at Chris, saying that he promised to keep them safe. She demands to know where Ethan is, and Chris says that he's gone. They couldn't save him, but he can save Rose. Chris says they need to leave, but Mia says there's something she tried to keep a secret, and that is that Ethan is very special. Meanwhile, Ethan's consciousness wakes up in a place he comments is freezing cold. He hears a very irritating laugh, and Evelyn reveals herself. She reveals that Ethan is dead, but not recently dead, like long dead. She explains that Ethan, when Jack stamped on his head back in Dulvey, died there and then, and were technically brain dead. But because he was infected with the mold, it regenerated him, and she uses all the times he should have died from his injuries, but didn't, as proof of this. This makes a previous conversation that Mia had had with Ethan make so much more sense now.
Hey, Doc.
Hello, Mr. Winters. I've got your daughter's results back, and I'd like you to come in to talk about them. How about next Thursday, 4 o'clock?
No problem. We'll be there. That was the doc. She'll see us next week. Hey, now. Think positively, all right? We talked about this.
I know. We hardly talk about anything else. I keep telling you, it's not Rose that I'm worried about.
Well, then what are you worried about? Look, she's gonna be fine. I just know it. What else matters?
We matter, Ethan! You matter! You just won't.
Mia, what are you talking about? Is there something you're not telling me? Come on, talk to me.
She wasn't worried about Rose here. She was worried about Ethan because he's essentially a bioweapon, a mutant. Ethan then regenerates and wakes up in his body and finds himself in the back of the Duke's carriage. But if the village is destroyed, how is the Duke able to ride around the village? Well, one could safely assume that the Duke isn't exactly human himself. He may be using the mold to travel, and this could be how he's been getting around the place so easily. He seems to be tapped into what people know, indicating that he has access to the network of consciousness. Nothing at all is really known about him other than the fact that he's familiar with the merchant who operated in and around Valdelobos in Spain when Leon was there. Anyhow, arriving at the ceremony site, Ethan says his farewell to the Duke. Moving through the Mutamycete up to the site, Ethan confronts Miranda, who is busy and in the process of reconstituting Rose into Giant's Chalice, and she's surprised to see Ethan is still alive. Problem is that the consciousness transfer into Rose has not worked. Quite simply, Rose is too powerful. She's even weakened Miranda too. Ethan demands she give Rose back to him and Miranda tries to reply, but Chris shoots her in the head from a distance. Trying to grab Rose whilst Miranda is incapacitated, she fights back and mutates, saying that her desires will be fulfilled. Ethan then fights Miranda, and eventually he's able to strike the final blow, killing Miranda for good and her body calcifies. Unfortunately, this has taken a toll on Ethan, and as he's holding his daughter, his right hand begins to calcify and he drops to his knees. Chris rushes over to him and he helps him up, saying that they need to move as the Black God is rising up. But Ethan is too weak, and he's holding Chris, and more importantly Rose, back. He gives Rose to Chris along with his jacket and takes the detonator for the bomb in the Black God off of Chris, telling Rose to have a good life. Chris then runs to the chopper whilst Ethan heads off to activate the bomb. On the chopper, Mia is there and Chris hands Rose to her, telling his squad to go. He then tells Mia that Ethan really is gone now. They then feel the explosion as Ethan has taken out the Black God, and this village has been completely destroyed along with the colony attached to it. One of Chris's guys, K9, then calls Chris over, and it's revealed that the BSAA didn't send any old human there. They sent bioweapons. Chris tells the pilot to set course for BSAA HQ over in Europe, and he says that someone has to pay. But let's go all the way back now to 1998. Right, now since there isn't really a confirmed canon for the scenarios in Outbreak Files 1 and 2, you're left to come up with your own interpretation of what happened and who was where. You can play as any character in any scenario, but there are obvious canon choices for these, such as George being a doctor and going through the hospital and university scenarios, and Alyssa going through the flashback scenario. Similarly, the RPD scenario makes sense with Kevin, since he's an RPD officer, but the only Resident Evil Outbreak character that is really important in this regard is Alyssa Ashcroft. Alyssa also has unique files that show up in a few of these scenarios, so we'll cover those scenarios as part of her backstory. Whilst chilling in Jay's bar in Raccoon City back in 1998, Alyssa Ashcroft hears a report on the TV about a crazy man attacking fans at a baseball game. A sick-looking man walks into the bar and attacks the barman there, and this leads to a very desperate situation where people attempt to escape. Alyssa teams up with a group of survivors and makes it to some transport, where she later ends up, although it's not clear how she got there, at Umbrella's Nest facility. In this facility, Alyssa is there with somebody by the name of Yoko, who had previously donated tissue samples to Umbrella for T-virus research, and they're confronted by one of the Umbrella researchers called Monica, who ends up dying after a G lava bursts out of her chest. Whilst in this facility, Alyssa assists Yoko and another survivor in defeating the grown G lava, and they escape the facility. Heading through the Raccoon City Zoo next, Alyssa finds a newspaper article she previously wrote in 1996 in regard to a man's body being found in a river in the Arkley Mountains. The man had a lot of drugs in his system and had been disposed of in the river near the hospital, and at the time, Alyssa had suspected that Umbrella were the ones responsible. She'd previously been here at the zoo investigating the zoo's director Elliot Martin, who had been suspected of smuggling protected species of plants. Alyssa follows up the lead from the newspaper she found at the zoo, and she finds herself in an abandoned private hospital in the Arkley Mountains. A hospital that Alyssa had actually visited once before, but she can't remember doing so. So way back when, Umbrella had used Arkley Hospital to conduct more experiments. They'd supplied drugs to the hospital, and two doctors working there, Drs. Erdott and Lester, would administer these drugs and record their observations. And these experiments were led by a member of Umbrella's virology team called Dr. Greg Mueller. Introducing different strains of T-virus to various patients, most of them had displayed symptoms of what some had termed the cannibal disease. The RPD found out about these experiments, but of course, since Chief Irons was being bribed by Umbrella, any investigations hit a dead end. Alyssa and her friend and colleague Kurt had previously shown up there in order to investigate the illegal drug testing, and managed to get caught up in an outbreak with Kurt being bitten by a zombified patient, who it so happens was Dr. Lester's wife Dorothy, who had herself been experimented on as she was suffering from heart disease, and Dr. Lester was desperate to try and save her. After the incident was over, the place was shut down and subsequently abandoned, with the public having no idea of what had happened, as it had been kept out of the news. Alyssa would survive, but her memories of the incident were suppressed by Umbrella, or rather Dr. Greg Mueller. One of the doctors, Dr. Erdott, left Raccoon City, but one had stayed, Dr. Lester. But something strange took place at the hospital, as a T-virus plant had grown, making its home in the building. Dr. Lester, grieving over the death of his wife Dorothy, who died in the hospital outbreak, watered and fed animals to the plant, as he also suffered mental degradation thanks to the T-virus spores, but these weren't enough to turn him into an actual zombie. He would later feed humans to the plant, which he'd now named Dorothy, believing it to be the reincarnation of her soul. Alyssa returned to this hospital after she was at the zoo and saw the news report of the man's body washing up near to the hospital, giving her flashbacks, and when they're at the hospital she would regain her memories, or was being chased by an axe murderer, who turned out to be Dr. Lester. After escaping Raccoon City, and as mentioned in part 1 of this video series, Alyssa wrote an expose on Umbrella called What is a BOW? And this piqued the public's interest into what was a very public court case involving Umbrella. But Alyssa's account of what happened and what she'd found out was quickly labelled by the powers that be as a conspiracy, and the whole bioweapons thing would for a long time be viewed as an urban legend. She would continue to try and expose corruption by using her skills as an investigative reporter, and Alyssa would end up interviewing none other than Oswald E. Spencer sometime before his death at the hands of Albert Wesker in 2006. Around 2016, Alyssa attempted to investigate and find out about the disappearances in the Dulvey parish, where she would report that over 20 people went missing in 2 years. At some point, Alyssa had a daughter, Grace. Alyssa moved around a lot, and this had led to a strained relationship with her daughter, and Grace developing social issues, but one night in 2018, whilst they were staying at the Wrenwood Hotel in Wrenwood, a small city not far from Raccoon City, Alyssa had come back after working. The phone rings and the person asks for a Miss Ashcroft before hanging up. The lights go out, with a concerned Alyssa quietly saying, "They're coming." She and Grace head downstairs to leave, and they would witness the brutal murder of the hotel manager there by a hooded man. This hooded man was someone that Alyssa had written about in her journal, with her suspecting that this man was following her. Alyssa shot the guy, with him seemingly dead, but the man later killed Alyssa by striking her in the neck with his machete. The man then dies, knocking over an oil lamp, and a fire spreads throughout the hotel, which burned it down, with it becoming derelict and abandoned soon after, as the damage from the fire would be too expensive to fix. Grace herself would later become a technical analyst working for the FBI, still haunted by the nature of her mother's death 8 years after it had happened. In the year 2026, Grace Ashcroft is working out of the FBI's Midwestern Field Office and is typing up a report as a victim has been found with strange black marks or blotches on the skin. This particular suspect has been found at an abandoned government office. The FBI believe that this murder is linked to 3 others who have been found with the same marks on their bodies. Grace's boss, Special Agent in Charge Nathan Dempsey, calls Grace into his office, as a 5th victim has now been found. The thing is that the body has been found at the Wrenwood Hotel. Dempsey is fully aware of the connection Grace has to this hotel, having seen her mother get brutally murdered there, but Dempsey says this is a good way for her to confront her past and to, well, move past it. Despite this case now encroaching on Grace's trauma, she accepts and makes her way to the city of Wrenwood. Walking down the street, Grace is let in by the officer guarding the cordon, Officer Cole. She enters the abandoned hotel and has to take a moment to mentally prepare herself. She enters and is absolutely terrified. Looking at her case notes, the body in the hotel had been there for several days and had started to decay. All of the victims in this case were noted by the FBI to have been survivors of the Raccoon City incident. One name on the list is M. Warren, age 90, who is likely Michael Warren, the mayor of Raccoon City, who fled the city like a coward when the outbreak began, leaving his daughter Catherine in the city where she was hunted and killed by Chief Irons. It's reported here that Warren died whilst living at a care home. Anyway, someone left a photo of Grace on the bar. Someone has been following her and watching her. A key is taped to the back for room 204, the room that Alyssa and Grace had been staying in. Going up to the room, Grace finds the bed covered in photos of her, and one in particular jogs her memory of the night her mother was killed. She recalls from this memory that her mother had hidden something downstairs behind a painting, so going back downstairs she finds what was hidden. In the leather case there is her mother's journal, and in it are Alyssa's observations regarding the hooded man that she had correctly suspected was following her. Also there is an MO disc. Pocketing it, Grace then sees Officer Cole in there. He's holding his neck, stating that something stung him. He then transforms into a zombie and attacks Grace, with her managing to fight him off at first, but she gets bitten. A tense chase up to the fire escape sees her fight with the zombified Officer Cole, and he falls out of the window and onto the street below where he dies. Hearing music coming from one of the upstairs rooms, Grace enters and sees a man sat in front of a fire. He gets up and this man looks awful. He says that he knows now that Grace is the one that he's been searching for, the special, chosen one. She tries to escape, but the large man grabs her, strangling her until she passes out. At the same time, Department of Security Operations, or DSO agent Leon Scott Kennedy, is in a place called Elbridge. He's speaking with his mission coordinator about a new body that's just been found. That's now 6 bodies, all with the same black blotches on the skin. The coordinator says that the team has settled on a person of interest in the case, a man named Victor Gideon, a man with ties to Umbrella. He's one of the researchers who had worked on the T-virus, and he's the man that was waiting for Grace in the hotel. He was initially meant to give evidence as a witness in the Raccoon trials, but no one was able to track Victor down. The mission coordinator gives Leon an update on the body reported found in the Wrenwood Hotel, so Leon drives over to Wrenwood. Getting there, Victor Gideon is carrying Grace out of the hotel over his shoulder. Leon can't quite believe his luck that their person of interest is right there, but Victor shoots strange darts at 4 people and starts an outbreak right there in Wrenwood as a cover for him to escape with Grace. Leon gives chase, trying to save these people and also telling the coordinator to have Wrenwood locked down, but he loses Victor. Leon is told that Victor purchased a building after Umbrella had gone bust, somewhere called the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center. Giving him the address, Leon removes his glove, and he too is suffering from the strange black blotches on his skin. The coordinator says they're running out of time. Later arriving at Rhodes Hill, Leon enters and is led to a room by a nurse there who says that the patients there are under experimental therapy developed by Dr. Gideon. She asks Leon to wait there. Whilst waiting and looking at a photograph of Victor and his staff, an announcement rings out over the intercom stating that the Code 6 emergency protocols are being enacted. The nurse runs into the room worried, saying they all need to leave, but she is killed by a zombified colleague who uses a chainsaw. He goes for Leon too, but pays the price. Whilst Leon is downstairs fighting zombified doctors, nurses and patients, Grace has come 2 upstairs and has gotten herself free of her restraints. She reads a note left by Victor on the table which says that she had been stabilized and given something called Dexafil. Maybe this explains why she didn't turn after she'd been bitten by the zombie. Searching the darkened hallways of this wing of the care center, Grace finds the shutter is not powered, so she'll need to find a fuse, and she does so, only the case it's in is locked, so she's going to need a screwdriver. She finds a lighter there though, which will help her see in the dark rooms, but she is surprised by an infected doctor in one of them, and she encounters something horrific. Running for her life, Grace finds refuge in a well-lit room, which itself provides a decent form of protection, as this creature, whatever it is sensitive to light and burns up when in it. Creeping around trying to avoid the monster, Grace is able to find a screwdriver, retrieves the fuse, runs for her life again and opens up the shutter. Leon, meanwhile, has emerged from his battle downstairs and sees Grace getting dragged into the darkness by the monster, and he shoots it, putting it down, and saves Grace. Asking her who she is and what she's doing there, the shutter comes down by way of Victor, who is watching from the dark and using a remote. With them separated, Leon wants to know why Victor grabbed her, but she doesn't know. Leon gives her his weapon and tells her to get out of there. Walking down the dark corridor, he comes face to face with Victor, who tells him that it's so good to finally meet him. He suggests they have a little talk, but Leon attacks him with Victor overpowering him, holding him up and seeing that Leon's symptoms are showing, seeing what he's suffering with, calling it Umbrella's curse. And Leon passes out. Grace, meanwhile, heads down into the lobby and finds a security room, and just beyond it finds a bloodied man on the floor. She also sees 2 cells, one empty and the other with a young girl in it, but talking to this girl who has cataracts and cannot see, the dying man tells Grace to stay away from her, and then dies. She managed to get a key card to the West Wing, so she can use this in order to access a new area of the building. Before doing so though, she spots a door leading out to a courtyard, but it has 3 square indentations in which to place things, so she needs to look around. Home to the administration offices, the West Wing is overrun too. Grace hears very loud banging, and passing through the kitchen, she can see the infected chef going about his usual business and chopping meat, whilst growling barely coherent sentences. It seems these zombies have retained some mental clarity and are trying to do the things they used to do in this place before the outbreak, with some still attempting to clean and doctors still trying to diagnose their patients. She even finds one zombie turning the lights off all the time because he has a sensitivity to light. Avoiding all manner of infected, such as patients who had developed main character syndrome and won't stop singing, Grace has to solve problems in this wing, finding items to unlock and access new areas, but she is able to find one of the quartz blocks that she needs in order to open up the door to the courtyard. She also finds the key card to the East Wing, which houses the wards. Through reading the documentation here, Grace learns that this care clinic is run by Dr. Gideon, and he had 3 senior members of staff that work here alongside him. There's the chairman, Mitchell Bennett, the lead researcher, Anthony Richardson, and the security manager, Luke Clark. From the looks of things, surprise surprise, there are illicit experiments going on here, but they've managed to avoid the gaze of all agencies in the US. An email written to one of the managers sent by Mitchell Bennett mentions they have a new hire, and that sucked for the previous researcher they had as they were sent for processing. By the way, this is Mitchell Bennett, zombified. He was eating a woman whilst simultaneously telling her that she was fired. She also discovers that the earlier Code 6 was enacted by Mitchell Bennett once Leon, the DSO, had got there, under orders from Victor Gideon. She discovers that the virus that had been unleashed here and in Renwood is a mutant T-virus strain, and by using a device called a hemolytic, which destroys infected blood cells, these poor zombies go boom. Grace discovers a journal written by Victor back in 2004, stating his master's research has come to fruition. He speaks of a child being the final piece of some puzzle to bring him closer to his master's vision. He speaks of the organization having managed to get the child's medical records, and he had her genetic information. Grace finds evidence that the Rhodes Hill Care Centre sent a disposal team to the Renwood Hotel after Alyssa was murdered in 2018 in order to remove any evidence. That included them destroying the body of the hooded man, the assassin. As a result, Alyssa's murder case had gone cold. Heading up to the lead researcher's office, which according to the guide pamphlet will house the sun quartz, she finds she needs a corrosive to burn the lock. Finding it's in a nearby room, she walks down the corridor towards it, but is surprised by Chunk, a patient by the name of Thomas Jackson, and one of 2 brothers here who simply can't stop eating everything, even pacemakers, although his bro Timothy is more into flesh of the human type. Avoiding this big boy, Grace sees something she really wishes she hadn't. It seems that after being dead, these zombies can randomly mutate into what are called blister heads, and they are incredibly aggressive. Grace then goes to check in on the young girl in the cell.
Hey. Are you alright? You're the lady from before. Yeah. This is, you're, Did anyone hurt you? Because I can't see? Oh, no, that's not what I meant. It's not my fault. The doctors gave us both medicine. It made our eyes go bad. So there was someone in there? There's another bed in this, My friend. Marie. One day she just disappeared. I'm sorry. When it happened, I was happy it wasn't me. Is that bad? I'm just gonna keep looking around.
Finding and taking the corrosive, Grace goes back to the lead researcher's office and finds Victor in there, and he says that he was looking for Dr. Richardson. Asking him why he kidnapped her, Victor says that he liberated her. He tells her his name and that he runs this center, that it took him forever to find her, that she is quite unique. He mentions something called Elpis, and that through Grace it can finally be set free. He says his master made her who she is. An alarm then goes off with Victor saying Phase 2 is about to begin. Somewhere else in the center, something happens to the infected lying on beds in the isolation ward. Victor asks Grace if she'd like to see what's under the hood, but she runs off and hides. Victor eventually leaves while saying there's no escaping her destiny to Grace, and she's able to go back into the office, melts the lock and grabs the second quartz. Also inside the safe though is a notebook, which is all about Oswell E. Spencer's research. Could Spencer be the master that Victor was talking about? In the notes it gives more information about this T-virus strain. There's a theory in here that it can be used in order to control memories and will. Repeated mutations of the T-virus trigger an abnormal reaction in an affected person's body. And aside from this resulting in a zombified human retaining parts of their characteristics and memories, this will, in theory, sweep the entire world and eradication will be impossible. It's the zombies retaining certain pre-infection characteristics that makes this what Victor believes is the key to human evolution. Accessing the isolation ward, Grace finds it empty, but she does find a nurse's log which details things about the young girl she'd come across. In these nurse's notes, Subject 171, the young girl, was described as emotionless and unsettling, as this led to the nurse feeling unease. Because she was blind, the nurse would attempt to give the young girl comfort by way of stroking her hair, but this had little to no effect. The nurse did say, however, that the security manager Luke Clark showed up and asked the girl a few questions about blood, to which she didn't know how to respond. Entering Luke Clark's office, Grace finds him dead. Most likely he was killed by Dr. Gideon, who was cleaning house, so to speak. But Grace finds the code for his safe. Unfortunately, the buttons on Clark's safe are Braille, so at the moment she's unable to know which button matches which symbol. But thankfully there's a young girl in this place that reads Braille. Clark has the level 3 ID band on his wrist, so Grace takes it, as this will give her access to high-level areas. Going back to the young girl's cell, Grace opens it and the young girl says her name is Emily. Taking Emily there to the safe, some unsavory infected people show up, so Grace has to go deal with them. Defeating them all, including the now reanimated corpse of Luke Clark, Grace checks in on Emily, who has the final quartz piece. Unfortunately, the monster Grace saw when she first woke up in this place is back, healing due to its regenerative abilities, and it grabs poor Emily, taking her somewhere else. Feeling that she can't abandon Emily, Grace jumps down into a dark hole and goes after her. Grace has come out in a long, dark tunnel, and it's very clear that this is some sort of facility that the Rhodes Hill Care Centre used in order to process people that had become surplus to their requirements, I guess. They were processed for their blood, and according to a note left by an employee, experiments were being carried out on the patients. They were infected, and with something important being in their blood, it was harvested. Walking through an area with many cells there, Grace spots Emily inside one of them, and the monster disappears into the vents. In order to power up the cell so she can get Emily out of there, Grace needs to find 3 joint plugs that are powering various areas in this facility. Moving around and avoiding the monster, Grace is able to find the 3 plugs and almost dies by nearly being grinded up into a paste along with a bunch of failed experiments. But before she goes to open up the cells, let's look into who or what this monster is. So the girl, as she is known, was formerly Subject 170, or her proper name, Marie. Yet the Marie that Emily was talking about. Marie used to occupy the cell next to Emily. Marie was administered blood collected from infected, and this caused mental instability, and then, of course, Marie, Subject 170, mutated and escaped, which is why Grace encountered her in the locked-off section of the care centre. In the cell Emily is in, it's filled with dolls, similar to the doll that was in the other cell back in the care centre, where Marie was being held, and at certain points when chasing Grace, the girl says she wants to play. In a security room, Grace can find a plan to kill the girl using UV lights, but this plan failed, as detailed by a staff member who wrote his last words on a piece of paper before dying from his injuries after seeing his colleagues get eaten alive. Placing the 3 joint plugs into the distribution unit, the cells are opened and Grace carries a very scared Emily to the elevator there whilst being chased by the girl. Getting to what they think is safety, the elevator is attacked by the girl and they scramble to get off it before the cable for it snaps under the weight of this beast. The girl grabs Grace's ankle and the elevator plummets. Grace hears a crack and a squelching sound, but is relieved to see that the beast's hand has been severed and not her own foot. As Emily still has the quartz, they can now place them into the door and escape to the courtyard. Carrying Emily through the courtyard, they spot a chopper and are confronted by the pilot, a top geezer by the name of Harry. A great name, to be fair. After some back and forth about trauma and what they've experienced, Harry says they need to get the helicopter key, and he tells Grace it's in a nearby office. Leaving Emily in the chopper, Grace heads inside and finds a record of Victor having met with someone to review a project. It seems that Victor is himself working for someone else, and the man he met with is only described with the initial Z. This review was impressive, according to this Z, and that it's progressed to phase 4, only the experiment hasn't quite yielded the results they were hoping for. It's abundantly clear that whoever Victor was working for gave him the funding to purchase the Rhodes Hill Care Centre in order for him to conduct nefarious experiments here. The note here once again mentions Elpis, and some blockade having to be extended to the year 2040, as whoever this organisation are clearly want Elpis before that date. This blockade extension is something that Grace has read about before. Anyway, what Harry didn't mention is that the office is a large elevator which takes Grace down into a lab that contains loads of equipment, and it appears that some seriously messed up stuff is going on in here. The aforementioned project that Victor had been working on. They're extracting blood from the infected inside these pods, the same blood that was administered to Marie, causing her to mutate into something horrid. Whilst Grace has been in this facility looking around for the helicopter key, Leon had been woken up and found himself tied up in the centre's attic. A few hours have passed since he had been choked out by Victor, and he finds Victor there with him. He asks Leon why he's there, asking if he's there for him or for Grace. What makes Leon react, though, is when Victor asks him if he's there looking for the answers to his disease. He calls Leon an ignorant fool, slicing his neck and drawing blood. Victor asks if Leon believes in human evolution, and he says that he's devoted his life to studying it, whereas Leon has apparently devoted his life to failure. What Gideon doesn't know is that Leon had been cutting away the ropes tying his hands, and he breaks free, laying an ass-kicking on Gideon, who flees before Leon can shoot him, as he's not at full strength at the moment on account of the infection. He says Leon is a dead man walking, and leaves him there in the attic. The mission coordinator speaks to Leon. He needs to make his way over to Victor's office. Up here in the attic, Leon encounters the other chunky brother, Timothy. Timothy is chowing down on some fresh zombie meat, but he's in the way, so Leon fights him and puts him down for good. Finding a way down into the care centre again, fighting zombies and blisterheads, Leon is able to ascend to Victor's office, and he gives the mission coordinator access into the files on Victor's computer. The mission coordinator is revealed to be Sherry Birkin, who, one of the survivors of Raccoon City herself, is still working for the DSO, even after that crap Simmons pulled in China. She finds a file on their condition. It's being called Raccoon City Syndrome. It's basically a latent residual T-virus infection that has been in the body and has mutated over time, so it cancels out any antibodies the infected person has. The virus built an immunity to the infection. Since Sherry was one of the survivors of the Raccoon City incident back in 1998, she too is dying from this disease. And they also find files on something Victor mentioned to Grace, Elpis, and that somehow Grace is connected to it. Having found the key for the chopper, Grace moves into another room and overhears Victor, who is talking on the phone. He's speaking with someone named Z, or Zeno. Victor says that all tests have come back positive. He's talking about a blood analysis done on Grace, and it's proved that she is the one they've been searching for. And he says that very soon Elpis will be in their hands. He says that he needs to initiate the protocol, and he activates a self-destruct sequence, laughs, and walks off. He's bringing this place down as he no longer has need for it. That means that Grace needs to shift it and get out of there, because the room that is the elevator is no longer there. Getting through the released test subjects, she just about makes it out and runs to the chopper. Things get a bit tense as the chopper needs time before it can take off, and this gives infected the chance to swarm it. They take off, but the weight on the chopper causes it to struggle. Meanwhile, Leon hears the sound of the out-of-control chopper. It crashes into the grounds of the care centre, so they didn't get very far, and Harry is dead. Whilst Grace gets a badly hurt Emily out of the chopper, Leon provides sniper support from a balcony and helps her get into the chapel where he catches up to her. Grace leaves the chapel with Emily as this exit leads to the water treatment plant, whilst Leon keeps the pursuing infected at bay. A new mutation shows up. It's essentially a blisterhead, but the mutation, or tumour, has covered the entire body and orange pustules have grown on it. But shooting these cause a fluid to erupt from them, turning any infected nearby into blisterheads themselves. Whilst Leon is fighting the infected, Grace needs to find a way to get them to the surface. They are once again bothered by the girl, so Grace needs to deal with this thing once and for all, and she thinks that if she can get the larger roof open, flooding it with light, she may be able to destroy this thing. Placing the badly wounded Emily down, it seems that the roof needs power. Of course it does. So down Grace goes in order to get the area powered. She's hunted down there and the creature is desperate to stop her. She's able to use the lights in the area to stun the beast, and uses this to her advantage and gets the power on. Going back upstairs, Grace opens the roof, burning the creature, and fires a couple of shots. As with the girl weakened, this is enough to put her down, and she melts into a disgusting ooze. On going back to check on Emily, it appears that she's passed away from her injuries. Grace tries to bring her back, but to no avail. She stirs, but this is because she begins to mutate and turns into a grotesque abomination. Grace tries to talk to her, but this does nothing, as is to be expected. Leon shows up and shoots Emily, putting her down, much to the protest of Grace, who still sees her as Emily. Grace blames herself for Emily's death, and Leon tells her he gets it. He says they have to keep going, but she throws Leon's gun back to him and walks off, clearly in a state of mental shutdown thanks to what she just witnessed. Leon begins to cough up blood as his condition is getting bad now. Grace goes to leave but is surprised by Dr. Gideon, who is waiting there for her. He tells her that Elpis is within reach and that he'd like her to go with him. He opens a shutter, telling her she is where she needs to be, and a man stands outside. A man that looks remarkably like a certain Albert Wesker. He looks over what remains of Raccoon City, telling Grace that she was the reason for its destruction, but that she's also the key to building a brave new world, the final piece. This man, the Xeno that Victor was speaking to earlier, tells her they'll show Grace her true purpose. A chopper then arrives to pick them up. Meanwhile, Sherry looks at her hand and her own infection is getting worse too. Her infection seems to be progressing slower than Leon's, perhaps due to the healing abilities that she had gotten from her father after he infected her with the G virus back in 1998. She gets in touch with Leon, who is driving over to Raccoon City, driving past the gas station he visited 28 years prior. Sherry tells Leon she hasn't been able to find anything on Elpis, as there's nothing on the servers at the CIA or the Pentagon. Sherry requested higher clearance, but she was told to shut down their investigation. Orders from people at the very top. Leon says he'll go it alone, as he doesn't want Sherry to land in hot water, but she says they're in this together, until the end. Leon's primary goal is to find Grace, as she has something to do with Elpis. Arriving in the ruins of Raccoon City, Leon has to proceed on foot. Sherry found coordinates on Victor's computer, and it places them right at the center of Raccoon City. Passing through the Applegate Hotel, Leon is ambushed by a huge spider BOW. Running from it at first, he is forced to fight it, eventually killing it by way of his hatchet. Shortly after this, he comes to a gate that has had explosives placed on it, but there's no detonator, so Leon needs to find that detonator if he's to go any further. Not far from there, Leon finds the remnants of a BSAA camp. What were they doing here? It was the North American branch. Leon checks a computer left there by the BSAA, and it appears that they too were headed to the center of the city. Sherry checked the database at the Pentagon, and she noticed that something was missing. There's no record of anyone ordering the missile strike that destroyed Raccoon City. Leon, using this computer, has alerted Victor, and it seems that Xeno orchestrated some kind of campaign in order to prevent the DSO from getting to Raccoon City, which obviously failed. Does this mean that Xeno is actually very powerful and holds a lot of influence? Xeno tells Victor that he's going to leave Leon to him. Leon finds a note mentioning that the 3 detonator parts he's after are scattered around the nearby area, so he gets to work in tracking them all down. Up until now, the streets have been very quiet. Save for the large spider, there's not been a single zombie in sight. Well, that's about to change as many rise from the dust and attack Leon. Heavily decayed with them having been here for a while, they're still surprisingly tough, but Leon mows through them. Searching the central camp and getting eyes on other BSAA camps there, Leon is able to track down the components. It's difficult as there are now many zombies everywhere, but he now has what he needs to blow open the gate. He also manages to come across a BSAA squad that had been killed brutally, and checking the video from one of the helmet cams, it shows 2 of the BSAA agents talking about the missile not being used to halt the spread back in 1998, it being used for another purpose. Their squad leader mentions something called ARC, that their mission is to retrieve Elpis, but on stepping outside they are gunned down by Xeno. Speaking of Xeno, he and Grace have just been dropped from the center of the city. Sherry checks to see if the man in the white suit, Xeno, comes up anywhere, but Sherry says the database has nothing, and Leon refers to the guy as a ghost. Using a bike from a BSAA container after using the detonators to blow the gate up, Leon speeds along the Raccoon City freeway, but is attacked by Gideon, who has brought along some Garma. These are further developed dog BOWs, formerly known as Cerberus. A lengthy battle now takes place between Leon and Victor, who is also on a bike, but Leon manages to put a hole in Victor's gas tank using his hatchet. Leon then plays a dangerous game of bike jousting with Victor, shooting his gas tank this time, and this causes an explosion which seemingly kills Victor. Continuing his journey onwards to the center of the city, Leon comes to the area where he and Claire got separated all those years ago. He then comes to the RPD, or what remains of it. Entering, Leon suffers a bunch of traumatic flashbacks of what he went through when he arrived there back in 1998.
It's on you now.
Leon finds a map of the area around the station, and the BSAA had set up headquarters there. He finds the banner that the other RPD officers had set up for him, welcoming him for his first day on the job as a rookie officer, clearly placed there by Zeno to taunt him. A note is pinned to the table and it says that he can't save anyone. Leon spots both Zeno and Grace on a monitor and pinpoints them to the east side of the RPD, but the gate is locked and Leon will need something to lift the gate. Large areas of the station are destroyed or inaccessible, but Leon explores and finds the station how he left it. Certain victims of this disaster still lie in place, now merely skeletons in the dust. Some zombified officers still wander around the RPD and Leon gives them peace, telling them to rest easy. Going to the library, Leon finds Old Faithful, the jack that he used to move the bookcases. He can use this to open the shutter. Shortly after going through the shutter, Leon hears the voices of Zeno and Grace, and she is wondering why she was taken there. Listening into their conversation, Leon hears Zeno tell Grace that military units from all over the world go there, to Raccoon City, for one thing, and that is Elpis. Zeno says that Elpis has the power to reset the military balance of the world, the last virus created by Spencer that was designed in order to control human consciousness. Someone didn't want Elpis found, and this is why the missile strike was ordered. Cover story, of course, was to stop the outbreak, with it thought by many conspiracy theorists that the US government wanted to cover their own involvement with Umbrella. Zeno tells Grace that she is the key, and he brings up a photo of Emily. But he says, in a way, this is Emily, but she's not the same girl Grace had met. Emily was one of many clones, each with their own tragic story, attempts to duplicate Grace. In a document found in Victor's secret laboratory underneath the courtyard of the care center, it mentions Spencer's research in regard to memory transfers. He claims that humanity suffers when its greatest leaders are lost. He theorized the best way to preserve greatness is to transfer those people's memories to a new vessel. He thought that in the same way fruit flies pass on memories to their offspring via their genes, human beings could do this too. He believed the way to do this was through blood, as the cells within it contain lots of information. This is what the Child Clone Project was for, memory transfers through blood. Given the T-virus gives them control over certain factors regarding the blood, Oswald Spencer hypothesized that using these same elements would facilitate the transfer of memories. This brings us to the Raccoon City orphanage. Back in part 1 I mentioned that the Umbrella Corporation were using children as test subjects sourced from the Raccoon City orphanage. Back in the 1980s, the orphanage was run and funded by the Spencer Foundation, and Oswald E. Spencer would regularly visit, but at one point these visits would stop. Back in 1990, 8 years before the Raccoon City incident, Spencer's researchers had cloned a bunch of young girls. One evening, one of the girls, Chloe, woke up to the sound of worried staff there, and they were speaking about other young girls being out of control. She heard screaming, crashing, and next door one of the doctors was attacked, and had his neck broken by young orphan girls with scarring on their heads, and their eyes were red. Chloe shouted at them, asking what they were doing, but they went after her, and she had to hide under the bed until they went away. She managed to make her way downstairs and through a trapdoor and down into the underground passages beneath the orphanage. She came to a small chapel, and inside, she found toe tags inside caskets which indicate some of the young girls that were at the orphanage had died, and were then discarded due to volatile symptoms. Chloe found a ladder and was chased again, but ascended the ladder and ended up in a lab underneath the orphanage. Chloe read about what was called the Series 60. Turns out that researchers here in this lab had injected the plasma of Oswald E. Spencer in an attempt to facilitate memory transfer. However, this failed as subjects developed mental abnormalities, as we've just seen through the children going crazy and killing people. What the researchers then changed was the viral load in the blood of the new Series 70, who was Chloe herself, and she was more stable. Further into the lab, Chloe discovered a slideshow, and looking at the photos on it, she found out who she was and how she came to be. A doctor then walked into the room and sedated Chloe and told his colleague that they needed to get rid of her. Chloe was then presumably disposed of, many clones would follow, and the final 2 clones would be Marie and Emily, who Grace encountered at the care center. The research on the blood is the work that Victor Gideon was carrying on. This is what he was doing at the care center, carrying on his master's vision. With Zeno having shown Grace archived footage featuring the sad story of Chloe, she has now learnt of the grim experiments being carried out underneath the Raccoon City orphanage. They weren't able to recreate Spencer's key, but they have the original, Grace, and Zeno tells her that she can unlock Elpis at Ark. Grace freaks out slightly when she asks if she was made, and he responds that she was. Leon shows up, but Grace passes out from stress-related trauma. Leon tries to shoot Zeno, but he appears to be able to dodge bullets just like Wesker did. Then another part of Leon's past drops in to say hello. A tyrant. Zeno leaves with Grace, and Leon is caught in another game of cat and mouse with his gargantuan ball bag. Leaving the RPD behind, Leon heads for the orphanage and passes through Kendo's gun shop. he has another painful flashback to a moment that stuck with him for his entire life, back when Robert Kendo demanded to know how the people who were meant to protect others allowed an outbreak like the one in Raccoon City to happen. He remembers that Kendo's daughter Emma was infected and was turning, and that Kendo had to kill her. Walking into the garage there, he finds Emma's remains, and next to them a note that bears the unmistakable Umbrella logo, and it's a prescription given to Emma by Umbrella. This angers Leon, and he vows never again. Well, if Leon is still angry, he now has the chance to vent this anger as the Tyrant shows up and starts to throw missiles at him. Shooting one of the missiles in his hand, the Tyrant's combat inhibitor gets busted, and it mutates. Leon is a little more skilled than last time he faced a Tyrant though, and he dispatches it. Now at the orphanage, Leon enters and it's pretty much gone. So he descends into the rubble and into the crater underneath in order to try and find Ark. After a hazardous descent into a chasm via train, he finds a rappel line left there by the BSAA and uses it. Black vines are everywhere down here and he's attacked by plants. He eventually discovers the source of the vines and it's Plant 43, which is something Leon encountered in Umbrella's nest facility decades prior. It had been taken over to Ark, but the transport had crashed, leading to it growing very large near to the entrance. So just behind Plant 43 lies the entrance to Ark. Adorned with the Umbrella logo, the door opens up and inside sit assets belonging to Tricell, HCF, and Umbrella. Inside the lab, Leon spots old friends, Lickers. Approaching a console, he sees a camera feed with Grace and Zeno on it. He traces them to the central refining system, something also called Pandora. He also spots an elite unit moving towards his position. They obviously know he's there, so not one to disappoint, Leon greets them and kills them all. They send more after him, but these are no match for Leon S. Kennedy, and he can even get one of the Lickers to help him even the odds. Moving forward, Leon sees decorative elements that point to Oswell E. Spencer's obsession with evolution and perfecting the human race. Leon also manages to find Umbrella's product catalogue in the lab too, and damn, these things aren't cheap. To buy a Gamma will cost you $30 million. A Tyrant, meanwhile, well, that'll be $120 million each. Leon discovers that Ark was a key bioweapon production hub for North America. Leon is confronted by the elite squad's commander. This guy's no slouch, and he knows who Leon is. An axe fight then takes place between the two, with Leon defeating this guy who may or may not be Hunk. But one thing is for sure, Hunk was in Raccoon City when everything kicked off, and this guy has the same marks on his hand as Leon, so this guy is suffering from Raccoon City syndrome too. However, if Leon leaves and goes back there, the commander's body is gone. Anyway, moving into the central refining area, Leon approaches Grace and Zeno, who says the technology to control another person's will already exists, but that it's not efficient at infecting others. Zeno believes Spencer solved that with Elpis. He then brings up the connections. The tech he was talking about just now that can be used to control people's will was of course Evelyn. Does this mean that Zeno is working for the connections? He says that they destroyed Raccoon City in order to obtain Elpis for themselves, and it's been waiting there since 1998. He reveals a console and a singular question is on it. What does the creator desire? Zeno says that if the wrong password is entered, then the Ark will be destroyed along with Elpis. Leon confronts Zeno, but he challenges him, saying that he can't defeat him. He shows off more Wesker moves, and Leon nearly severs Zeno's forearm with his hatchet, but the wound heals almost instantly. Leon starts coughing up blood again, and Zeno is about to kill Leon, and a fast-thinking Grace points Leon's gun to her own head, and this stops Zeno. Leon then shoots out the supports for the platform they're on, and Leon and Grace manage to get off it and away from Zeno. The platform they're on takes them to a disposal area, but Leon collapses. Sometime later he comes to, and his infection has spread quite a bit now. He says that Raccoon City is where it all began for him, and he wants to make a difference. Grace says they can't stop Zeno, and Leon recalls him talking about a password. But Grace says she has no idea what password he's talking about. Helping Leon up, he says that he's going to destroy Elpis. Leon makes Grace promise that if anything happens to him, she'll end this and destroy Elpis. Spotting a door in there, Grace says if they can move a large crane, they can get to the door. They spot another door, and Leon gives Grace a boost up and he'll wait there, as he's in bad shape. It seems that Grace needs to access a key in order to power a console, so off she goes to search the facility. Having to dodge a bunch of Lickers and also more zombified subjects, Grace finds what she needs, which is a key to move the crane. Doing so, Leon makes his way through the other door in the disposal area. She receives another key, and this one opens up a large door. Behind that is another door, and Grace now needs 2 orbs in order to open up this one. She finds the first Animus orb, with this one making up the red parts of the Umbrella logo. On the way to get the second orb, Grace finds some minutes that have been transcribed by the AI control center there. It's the transcript of a conversation between Zeno and one of the Connection's many shadowy organizations, this one being called the State. In this meeting, the Connections talk about how they control the BSAA, or rather a large part of it. I guess that explains how the information about Ethan, Mia, and Rose leaked to Miranda. Sneaking her way through a room with bioweapon transport containers, Grace is able to obtain the second Animus orb, with this one making up the white part of the logo, and the door opens up. Inside what is the archives room is a control terminal with Grace's information on the screen, and approaching it, Grace inserts the MO disc that her mother had hidden behind the painting in the hotel. Clicking on a file titled The Creator is a video file of her mother interviewing Spencer, and in this interview, he talks about life taking unexpected turns. He seems to be showing remorse for his actions and that his vain ambition to become a god has destroyed lives. Spencer says here that he wants the world to know the truth. This file ends, but there's another file titled Grace. What's interesting here though is a screen detailing the minutes from one of the first assembly meetings with the Connections. Another of their shadow organizations, this one being the Defense, mentions the outbreak of the T-virus and someone with the initials KD ordering the missile strike on the city, and this was done without the authorization of the president. The Connections were involved, so there was no need for it, apparently. The late President Adam Benford, also a close friend of Leon, had discovered that another offshoot of the Connections, who remember are called the Family, were the ones responsible for the missile strike on Raccoon City. You'll also remember that Benford was assassinated by the Family after they learned he planned to reveal the truth. Meanwhile, Leon is back inside the main part of the facility, and he's struggling, fast progressing into end-stage infection, and he's getting weaker. Every step is getting harder, and having to fight bioweapons is no easy feat. He's determined to destroy Elpis in order to make a difference. Fighting through liquors, he's able to power up an elevator and takes it up to the hallway leading to the central refinement area. Grace is now watching the video file with her name attached to it. In this one, it's a continuation of Alyssa's interview with Spencer. She asks him about his legacy, and he states that his research opened up Pandora's box and unleashed disaster on the world. Alyssa reveals that Elpis is the Greek goddess of hope. He says humans can't predict when they will die, and this is why they have hope. He says that he was wrong and that he's plagued by guilt, that happiness cannot be achieved at the expense of others. Spencer calls an end to the interview, which frustrates Alyssa, and she asks him why she was invited there, if this is all he was going to say to her. A baby is brought to him, and Alyssa asks if this is one of his test subjects. He says no, that this baby girl is just a normal baby girl, an orphan who Spencer took in and adopted. He says that she is his hope. Alyssa holds her, and Spencer tells her this girl is named Grace. He says he hopes that what he said to her serves as a requiem for those who have passed. A stunned Grace barely has time to process what she's just learned when she sees Leon outside the room she's in throwing up blood, and he's in serious trouble. Rushing to him, Grace has to pass through Spencer's office. On the wall is a framed painting from Miranda herself. The two had seemingly stayed in touch. Reaching the stricken Leon, Grace helps him up and they enter the chamber, but Grace says that she doesn't know the password. Leon tells her to put the wrong one in and it'll destroy the bioweapon. Zeno is waiting there and Grace agrees to enter the password only if Zeno lets Leon live, and he agrees. Approaching Elpis, she recalls what her mother said to her, that she is her hope, and Spencer spoke about hope as well. Now she puts the wrong code in, Elpis is destroyed, as is Ark. Leon gets Grace to safety and tries to fight Zeno, getting overpowered, and he shoots Leon in the head, killing him. But that's not canon to the story, so let's disregard that. What Grace really does is enters the password hope into the console, and Elpis stirs. Victor then approaches, wounded, and a number of vials emerge. Leon asks Grace what she's doing, but she worked it out. Spencer regretted what he did and wanted to atone. Zeno is having none of it though. He injects himself with Elpis. His hope of a powerful new ability to control people is dashed, as Grace informs him that Elpis is a cure for all bioweapons and viruses derived from progenitor. That includes the mutant T-virus in his own body, and he loses his power. Oswald had led people to believe that Elpis was a bioweapon that could control both memories and human will, when in fact it was a powerful antiviral that was his way of atoning for what he'd done to the world, and to countless human beings. Elpis is a cure for progenitor since pretty much all of the bioweapons in the world are derived from that as their base. We see here that Spencer had shown remorse for what he'd done. He still had an obsession with human evolution, but through the sacrifice of many young kids for the selfish and vain ambition of being God, this played on his conscience and not the adults he'd sacrificed. He likely couldn't give a hoot about them. Spencer's continued obsession with evolution and immortality was seen, with him continuing experiments through Alex Wesker, in which he had her find an immortality virus until she went and betrayed him. Go and watch part 2 of this video series if you want to know the story of Revelations 2. But his guilt was enough that he would adopt Grace as a baby, and as we saw, he gave her over to Alyssa, and Alyssa raised her as her own. Experiencing his power leaving him, along with Grace telling him she's nothing special, Zeno goes for Grace, then Leon intervenes. Zeno is now just a normal human, so he doesn't have a lot of strength. Victor finds all this amazing. He says he's humbled by the genius of Spencer. He says that Grace and Emily are in no way related to each other. Grace was just a normal child. This confusion explains why Victor stated back in the lab that after blood tests, Grace was the girl they were looking for. As mentioned earlier, the Connections had managed to procure Grace's biological data a while back, and those blood tests Victor was doing on Grace matched the records they had, but the fact remains it still seems that both Victor and Zeno and the Connections were miles off in their assumptions that Grace was the original off of which the cloning program was based. Zeno is more concerned with the amount of money that was wasted on Victor's experiments. Victor says that with all the bioweapons in the world rendered useless, the world order will be thrown into chaos, and he likes a bit of anarchy, does Vic. Victor is convinced that this is what Spencer wanted, anarchy, and vows to bring this vision to life. Zeno says that Victor and Spencer were means to an end, but he replies that Spencer outwitted them all, and that Zeno is just an imitation. Zeno says the Connections are done with him, but Victor chops Zeno's head clean off with what is now a mutated arm, which he uses to stab Grace. She injects Leon with the Elpis antiviral and tells him it's a cure. The latent T-virus in his system then goes away, and Leon immediately starts to feel better. Unfortunately, Victor has triggered the self-destruct sequence and the platform plunges. Leon faces off against Victor, who he calls Umbrella's last skeleton. He's incredibly powerful, and after some punishment, he mutates. It's revealed here that Victor had implanted a Nemesis gamma parasite inside him, which explains why he has the same pustules on him after mutating, the same as Nemesis's 4th stage had. Eventually, Leon is able to bring Victor down. Looking for Grace, he finds her, wounded, but she's okay. The place is coming down around them, and one by one the lights go out, with Leon saying that he's with her until the end. They're then blinded by lights and a team start rappelling down. Leon fears the worst, and he prepares to face off against them all, but one of them contacts Alpha and tells Leon that Captain Redfield has a message for him. With the smouldering ruins of Ark ablaze, Leon speaks with Sherry, telling her there's a dose with her name on it. He then speaks with Grace, who is sad they couldn't save Emily. Leon says that he made sure he didn't hit any of her vitals so they could still save her. Leon then leaves and throws away the glove he's been using to hide his Raccoon City syndrome symptoms, no longer afflicted with the disease. Another chapter in his life has come to a close. This has hit the news too, it seems, and reports of a bioweapons lab being discovered inside the ruins of Raccoon City are put out to the world. That this location was responsible for the worldwide spread of bioorganic weapons, and this has operated for decades. FBI investigations into Spencer and Umbrella were then reopened, with many believing that the US government deliberately drove Umbrella into bankruptcy. Conspiracy theorists were starting to spread rumours online that the government, under the control of a shadowy organisation, are responsible for the death of Alyssa Ashcroft as some sort of cover-up. The president was then forced to come out and deny any government involvement in this. Rhodes Hill was then exposed as a bioterror front, and Emily had been found inside the bioweapon she seemingly transformed into, almost like she was cocooned. Sometime later, Grace is back at work and speaking to Leon on the phone, who tells her that Sherry is okay now. It seems that Emily is okay too, and Grace is now her legal guardian. Her boss, Nathan Dempsey, is demanding her report on the Spencer and Umbrella case. It appears that Emily had a cataract sorted out. Back in Raccoon City, though, 2 more elite soldiers stand in a destroyed ARC facility, stating they took out a bunch of BSAA agents there, and are retrieving their objective before the BSAA send in the Wolves, likely referring to Chris's squad. But let's now wrap up the Connections' involvement in all of this, now that we know a lot more about them. As we saw when Leon entered ARC, there were various interesting things in the entrance, and these were assets belonging to Tricell, HCF, and Umbrella. Tricell were obviously involved heavily in what happened in Africa in Resident Evil 5, and you'll recall HCF was the military arm of Umbrella's rival organisation, who we can pretty much now assume were the Connections themselves. The Connections controlled Tricell, HCF, and took all of Umbrella's assets once they went bust, which probably means that Wesker was working for the Connections, and they are likely the long mysterious rival organisation of Umbrella. And it's certainly possible that this is who Ada had been working for too. This is probably how Zeno looks so much like Wesker. He's a clone, but with his own unique personality. Maybe they managed to implant Zeno's memories into the Wesker-type body, which had the powers of the mutant T-virus inside it. Which could explain why Zeno has the same black marks on his face as Leon, as he's effectively suffering from the latent T-virus symptoms, as Wesker had injected himself with the mutant T-virus. Maybe we'll see more Wesker clones at some point. Possibly, but it's just a theory at this point. The US government went after Umbrella with ferocity, under the direction of the Connections, who obviously wanted their assets, bioweapons and research, for their own ends. As you remember from Part 2, President Benford tried to blow the lid off the whole affair, but was assassinated by the family, who were under the leadership of the National Security Advisor to President Benford, Derek Simmons. The family were under the control of the Connections too. If the connections did control the family, this would likely explain how Derek Simmons came into contact and grew an unhealthy obsession with Ada Wong, since they were both effectively working for the same organization. Whilst Leon was searching for the components in Raccoon City, Sherry discovered the Pentagon had put pressure on the BSAA. The North American branch had been moving independently, and since the connections effectively controlled large parts of the US government, this could also explain why the part of the BSAA under the control of the connections had sent BOWs into the village. It's very likely the connections wished to secure Miranda's research on the mold. This also, I'd guess, explains the formation of Blue Umbrella, so they could get the data Lucas wanted to send to their rival, the BSAA teaming up with them, Chris's distrust of them, and then the Dulvey cover-up causing Chris to take his BSAA squad away, going rogue and becoming the leader of his Hound Wolf squad. It's likely that after the events of what happened in Eastern Europe, in the village, and with Ethan and Miranda, Chris discovered how deep the connection's claws were dug in, and this is how they found out about ARC. The BSAA were close to getting to ARC, but as we saw, Zeno killed this BSAA team before they could get to it. This is likely just the tip of how deep their influence and reach goes. As we heard Zeno explain to Grace, Raccoon City itself was bombed to stop other militaries getting to Elpis before the connections did. It's why they had the destroyed city blockaded for so long. They'd moved into ARC not long after Umbrella had been bankrupted and had found Elpis, but obviously they were missing the final piece. Grace. They'd used ARC as a hub for bioweapon production and distribution for a very long time. The destroyed Raccoon City was a perfect cloak for these activities, if you like. It's possible that Grace's boss Dempsey could be part of the connections himself, as he sent Grace to the Wrenwood Hotel despite knowing about her trauma. It's entirely possible that Grace's report will end up being heavily redacted, removing all mention of the connections and the control they have over the government, leaving anything in there that implicates Spencer and Umbrella. So what's next? With Chris's Hound Wolf squad showing up after Leon and Grace's ordeal and Chris sending a message, perhaps the next saga in this story is them going after the connections. Maybe. One can live in hope for one final Leon and Chris adventure.
I'm sure I'll run into him at some point.
With the two connections soldiers at the end stating that they're grabbing the objective before the wolves show up, perhaps Chris and Leon will be going back there again. I would like to know what came of Chris and the Hound Wolf squad's trip to BSAA HQ after the events of Resident Evil 8, but I'm sure that will come at some point. With this part of the story over, let's move on to the furthest point in the timeline. The year is now 2037. 16 years after the death of her father, Rose has been separated from Mia and is under the protection of the US government. Rose meets a man in the park and he's one of Chris's Hound Wolf squad, who is codenamed K9, but his real name is Dion Wilson. Rose is an outcast, and girls at her school bully her because they think she's a freak. Chris even had to go to the school to reassure teachers that Rose wasn't dangerous. Rose tells K9, who she refers to as K, that she would get rid of her powers in a heartbeat if she could. K takes Rose to a secret facility housing a government lab, which itself is housed to a small piece of the Mega Mycete, the Black God. K tells Rose that if she links with it, mentally, she can use the realm of consciousness to retrieve a purifying crystal that will cleanse her of the mold in her body. Miranda, even after her death at the hands of Ethan, still existing inside the realm of consciousness, had been researching this purifying crystal. Rose links with it and travels to the realm of consciousness. As explained earlier, this is the record and catalogue of people's consciousness that it's amassed over the years. She wakes up and finds herself in a representation of the village castle's dungeon. Venturing further, she sees a grotesque substance covering the walls and floors. Hearing a knock coming from the other side of a locked door, she finds the key and is about to be pulled into the strange substance, but is pulled to safety by someone. To Rose's shock, it's a clone of herself. A short time later, Rose and her clone come across yet more clones, all of them imprisoned and trapped. Rose finds more of her doppelgangers dead, and it seems they've been killed in a very gruesome manner. Rose finds a handle for the door to escape, but the clone she saved is being attacked by a monster called a Face Eater. Clue is in the name. Rose must wait for the door to open whilst avoiding more Face Eaters, which appear to spawn from the gross substance on the floor. Rose eventually manages to escape the Face Eaters, but only momentarily as she is cornered. A bright yellow light comes to Rose's aid, allowing her to escape further into the castle. Now to safety, Rose communicates with the light source, and it tells her to leave. Rose sarcastically asks if this light is her guardian angel, to which the light responds, sure. This leads to her agreeing with the name Michael, after the Archangel St. Michael. Walking down the hallway, Rose hears the sound of someone laughing. Someone very familiar. It's the Duke, saying, "It looks like we've caught another." And then Rose 2.0 is consumed by the red substance. This red substance is called the Liquid Void. Interesting to note is the Duke referred to the clone as a rabbit, and this note shows us the Duke calls the Face Eaters dogs. He refers to a hunt. It also seems that the clones have been after the purifying crystal too, Rose gives her position away, and the Duke is overjoyed. Another rabbit to hunt. This leads to Rose running to attempt to escape, and she runs down the halls as they become covered in the liquid void. This also happens to the exit, which closes itself off. Michael shows up again and provides Rose with a gun, which she uses to defeat Face Eaters. Going back to the main hall, Rose discovers that she needs 3 masks, bronze, silver and gold, in order to obtain the crystal. Michael directs Rose towards a substance called the Rose Winters variant. Her body absorbs the substance and it gives her the power to destroy cores. The cores are basically called sclerotia, and the sclerotia are often associated with a patch of liquid void that the mold has spread through. Essentially, the sclerotia allow the mutamycete, or the mold, to inhabit the liquid void. The sclerotia that are facilitating the production of the liquid void, which not only slows Rose down, also possess the danger of pulling her into the void through the Face Eaters, which are molded creatures. Anyway, Rose uses her increased power to obtain all 3 masks and places them onto the statue, unlocking her prize. But one problem. The Duke reveals that the crystal is a fake, and it crumbles in her hands. The Duke placed a fake one there to give false hope to his prey, to force them to play his game. He says that nothing that valuable could manifest on that particular stratum. He says that he had to bait the trap, and just like that, Rose is grabbed by creatures in the liquid void and pulled down into an arena of sorts. She has to fight against a huge creature she's met before during her pursuit of the 3 masks. He's called the Executioner, and he's mad. With the help of her powers, she's able to defeat the Executioner, and the Duke is furious. He summons even more creatures, and Michael tells Rose to run and jump off a cliff. With no other option, she does it. Rose falls into another place, this time into the grounds of the Beneviento estate. Michael appears to tell Rose that she is in a deeper stratum than the one previous. It seems that this catalogue, or this realm of consciousness, has many levels to it. Michael also mentions that the deeper Rose has to go, the harder it'll be for her to escape. Rose sees a teddy bear with a message on it saying, "I know where the crystal is." She enters the elevator and Michael says that someone is trying to block him. Rose loses contact with Michael altogether. She finds a diary entry that she wrote years earlier about the kids saying mean things to her at school. She says that due to her nature she sweats, but the sweat is pure white. Anyway, Rose then walks through the creepy hallways featuring disturbing drawings on the walls and comes to a room which features loads of teddy bears resembling the one she had when she was little. She spots the crystal in a locked cage and the lights go out, and she hears a creepy voice saying it's playtime, and Rose has to solve a puzzle. She dissects a teddy bear and finds a relief for a locked door. She then has to solve yet another puzzle, as 3 scenarios exist with representations of Rose's own childhood trauma, and she has to place dolls in each of the dioramas. She is slightly alarmed to see a mannequin that resembles her mother, Mia, but after completing the 3rd and final scenario, Rose finds that the mannequin is moving around the place by itself. She receives a key for the elevator's breaker box though, and answers a phone featuring the voice of the antagonistic girl that nonetheless appears to be helping her. The girl tells Rose to take the elevator to her. The hallways seem to be a lot darker and are starting to show signs of the liquid void seeping through. She gets to the elevator and surprise, surprise, the elevator fuse is blown, so she needs a new one. The mannequins now have a mind of their own though, and Rose has to keep her eye on them at all times, otherwise they'll grab her. Truly terrifying. Rose grabs the fuse and dealing with not 1 but 4 mannequins, she makes it back to the elevator again, leaving and ascending to meet the mysterious girl. Another problem though, the girl laughs and says that she's gathered some friends, and these friends are the same murderous dolls that are under the power of Donna Beneviento, the same dolls that Ethan encountered. She evades the dolls using her wit, and ends up in the bedroom where the dolls bully and torment Rose. Rose then has to run, avoiding the mannequin resembling Mia, and eventually sees Michael again, who helps Rose get to safety.
I can't take much more of this. Why are they talking about my dad? I never even met him. No, I don't know. I don't know the first thing about him. I wish I did. All I know is he died protecting me. I try to imagine what my life would have been like if he hadn't died. Would he have taught me to ride a bike? Helped me with my homework? Read me a story every night? Would he have been there for me? Proud of me? Sometimes, when I feel lost or afraid, I try to imagine what he might have said to me.
Michael then transports Rose to her old family home, telling her it's safe there. She finds things around the house, hearing what seems to be the memory of her father, Ethan. Going upstairs, Rose finds a letter from Ethan.
A letter for me?
Happy half-birthday, Rose. My gift to you is a promise. I'll always be there for you, no matter what. I'll be there every birthday to watch you blow out the candles on your cake. I'll be there to make you breakfast and walk you to school every day. I'll be there when you have a bad dream and sing to you until you fall back asleep. I'll hug you tight when you're troubled or worried and tell you that everything's gonna be all right. You are my precious Rose. Never forget that, Dad.
No one loves you. No! No! Michael! Michael, help! Michael! No!
It's our old friend, Evelyn. She pulls Rose from the safe place and drags her back into the Benevento house. She tells Rose that the crystal isn't even there. Rose needs to go even deeper into yet another stratum. Evelyn disappears into the liquid void and essentially fills the mansion with it, hoping to drown Rose. So since Evelyn was programmed to want a family, and with it becoming an unhealthy obsession, and since Rose was Ethan and Mia's real daughter, well, let's just say that Evelyn isn't happy and doesn't like Rose. Rose gets to the elevator and Evelyn is there. She grabs Rose, saying that both Mia and Ethan were supposed to die and join her there in the realm of consciousness. But before Evelyn can complete her evil work, Michael saves Rose, giving her the chance to escape. She's not safe yet though, as Rose has to confront Evelyn. She uses her powers against Evelyn's glorified wind tunnel, and she's saved by a man who shoves her down into the next stratum. Was that Michael? Rose is in the deepest stratum now, in the centre of the village. She has to fight off the clones of herself again, descends underneath the village and sees a massive heart-like structure. She also finds a number of notes scattered around a laboratory. Notes from Miranda. These notes tell us that although the Mega Mycete absorbs and stores the records of all those that have died in its proximity, there are laws which govern the world within it. One of these laws is that only those that are attuned to the Mega Mycete can retain control of the faculties within the realm of consciousness. Not only that, but everything they learned in the physical world carried over to the other realm, which explains why Miranda was able to carry on researching there, as she was heavily attuned to the mold. Same as Evelyn. She's still trying to find a vessel for her daughter Eva, and the only real candidate for this is still Rose. Another note states that she'd used other people's consciousnesses to create entities, face eaters. Again, these were the results of Miranda's failed experiments in trying to find a vessel for Eva. A different note mentions that Miranda tried to duplicate Rose, but only succeeded in making, in her words, a pathetic husk. She states that the face eaters had parts of their faces missing, as did the Rose replicas, which explains the Duke's note about putting makeup on them to make them seem more alive. Miranda says she tried, but she says that some sort of interference is preventing her from creating a suitable replica. She even made a version of the Duke. Of course, it wasn't the actual him. She created him as she found out that under situations involving stress, the husk could express some of Rose's abilities. She created the masked Duke in order to perform these stress tests as research. Another note mentions Evelyn, mentions her as a failure. This irked Miranda slightly as Evelyn was trying to exact her own agenda, and this messed with Miranda's, and we were about to find out exactly what Miranda's agenda was. She had a plan to lure Rose into that realm. That way, Rose would essentially be offering herself as a vessel.
It's working. Oh my God. Is this what normal feels
Rose, I've waited so long for you.
Who are you?
My name is Miranda.
What?
You had become so powerful. Far too powerful for me to subdue directly. So, I had to lure you into this realm so that you might willingly relinquish your powers.
No, but Kay said...
Did he? Or did I? That Kay was an illusion. Very convincing, wouldn't you say?
No way.
Now you can become the vessel for my Eva!
Rose, run!
Ethan, you pest!
Go!
So, strengthen me, for he can manifest. He can save you, Rose! No one can.
Well, it seems that Ethan was Michael all along. Ethan, being highly attuned with the mold thanks to Evelyn, was attuned enough with it that he was the one that was preventing Miranda from creating a suitable Rose replica. He and a now mold-free Rose run away from Miranda, and Rose asks him why he didn't tell her who he was. He says it was to keep her safe. This could echo what Chris did by not telling Ethan that Miranda impersonated Mia in order to try and protect him. Ethan maybe now understands why Chris didn't tell him. Just before they escape the caves, Miranda grabs Rose, but Ethan shoots Miranda in the face, and he and Rose leave the caves. Miranda is set on using Rose as a vessel, and Ethan tells Rose to go and live a normal life. Not wanting to leave her father to die again, she reabsorbs the power from the crystal and gains back her powers. She eventually defeats Miranda. She's gone for good this time.
Hey, sweetie.
Oh my god!
You're so grown up now. And even though I wasn't there with you, I've always watched over you. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you.
All you've ever done is protect me.
No. Not this time. You lost your chance. I'm so sorry.
No. It was my choice. And I don't regret it one bit. If I had left you, then we never would have had this chance to talk face to face. So it's okay. I'm okay.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so very proud of you. I love you, Rose.
I love you too, Dad.
Rose then leaves the realm of consciousness and has her father's wedding ring in her hand. She later visits Ethan's grave, and she's interrupted by what looks like an agent who tells Rose that she is needed. He taunts her by calling her Evelyn, and Rose doesn't take too kindly to this since she knows exactly who this Evelyn is now. She threatens the man, and a sniper seems to be watching from a distance, ready to take Rose out, but the agent has him stand down. As they're driving off, a figure appears in the road. And that's it for the story so far of the Resident Evil franchise. It's been a long series, but it's been really cool to dive into a franchise that has been going strong for decades now. I can't wait to see what else gets added to this universe. It certainly feels like Requiem added a sense of finality to the series, with more to come with this story arc in regard to the connections, likely through the upcoming DLC, but that's not to say there won't be new spin-off titles that flesh out the stories of certain characters along with remakes. And of course we've still got this thread just dangling there, as I'm eager to find out what came of Chris and the Helmwolf Squad's trip to BSAA HQ after the village incident. If you enjoyed these videos on Resident Evil, then please leave a like, subscribe if you aren't already, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. But for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.